Okay, let's see if this is on. Should be. All right. Okay, if you can see this, just message me and I'll see if I pick it up. I'm not sure. I've not done this one before, but anyway, the idea is I thought I've got to do this Q&A, and I'm just back from holiday. I was in Thailand for a couple of weeks, which was nice, and I thought I would do this live. So I'll answer the questions which I got on Instagram and YouTube, and then, assuming we've got time, if you guys have got any more, then I can fill in. So there's one person watching. Whoever you are, could you like say something, type in something, so I can just see if this is working on my end. It's quite hard to tell. Anyway, I'm going to assume it is, and just thank you, Diego. Appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, cool. Right, so I'll get on with the Q&A, and then as people join in, if anyone's got anything to say, just put it in the comments, and I'll kind of like try and get them. Awesome. Thank you, Rico. Appreciate that. Right, so anyway, first question. T20A6 says, what would be the next big thing in the fitness industry? Do you have any predictions? Yeah, it's a good question. I would say, I think at the moment, what's going to happen is there'll probably be a revert back to the mean. So I think it's safe to say the big thing in the industry right now is the length and partials. So I think that's probably going to die off. There'll be a revert back to the mean. In fact, we're already starting to see it. I've rebelled against that quite a lot, as has Jeffrey Verity Schofield recently. So I think people have done it for long enough that they're starting to see it's not the be all and end all. So I think, first of all, that will revert back to the mean. And I think after that, and that might take a year or so, I honestly think after that, there's going to be a piece of research which comes out which will probably look at the benefits of shortened movements. I think that's going to happen. I honestly feel like that's where it's heading next, because that will be something which hasn't really been picked up on over the last 10 years. And then I think you're going to start to see more a reversion back to the mean of people saying full range of motion, but emphasizing certain shortened range movements for particular exercises, like, for example, a cable crossover or a full squeeze bicep curl. And I think that's going to be the next big thing. But that will happen somewhere in the future once we've reverted back to the mean. So that's what I think. My bold prediction. We'll see how I go. Next question is Freaky D, the big man. So a lot of time for Freaky D. He's a super nice guy. He says, biggest hits and misses you see in online coaching from the business aspect. Yeah, a lot, actually. So I've been doing online coaching now for 10 years, full-time for 4. So the biggest miss I see is people not learning from more established coaches. It's a very common thing. I think the reason is coaching is quite low entry. Anybody can get online and be a coach. You don't have to have any qualifications. You just have to have the confidence of youth. And I think that's a big thing. So I think it'd be wise to learn from other people. So the big mistake that I see is, because it's very low entry, you get a lot of very overconfident people who attempt to break into an industry which is really very ruthless. Like the guys who are doing this full time, they are the best of the best. So you guys see a bunch of people online in the YouTube space doing coaching, like myself, Paris, Landon. These guys you see, they are the creme de la creme. For every one of us, there are 10,000 online coaches who do it part-time. They work a regular job and they never really break through into that upper stratosphere. But that's how capitalism works. The best of the best get the majority of the business, and everybody else gets whatever else. So 10% of people in an industry will get 90% of the business, and 90% of people will get the other 10% of business. That's the way capitalism works. So I think if you have a guy who's doing it full time and is making a good living doing it, they are worth listening to. Now, the way that I came into online coaching was I came into it off a background of 15 years working professionally. So I think that goes in my favor. One of the reasons that I have been able to make this an actual business and make it work for me full time is I take it very seriously. I worked 15 years in a very disciplined job, a job where every minute of your day was not only scheduled but planned out. Like that, there's a certain type of meticulousness that comes with that, which I can transfer into coaching so that I make the best use of the day, so my clients feel taken care of. There are never any broken promises. You know, if you're expecting a check-in on a Monday morning, you're going to get a check-in on a Monday morning. And I think a lot of people miss that because they're not coming into coaching from a background of a corporate job or a very meticulous job where there are consequences to not keeping up with deadlines and not providing a good service. I think a lot of young guys get involved and they don't have backgrounds where they understand what it means to miss a day, what it means to be late for a meeting. I think there's a lot of that. So that's the first thing. And that really just falls into the, thank you, Richard. That really just falls into the category of just basic work ethic. I think in terms of other things, I think a lot of it is just providing a really good service, being good to your job. I think you have to have systems in place. So onboarding for my clients, there is a specific onboarding procedure for my clients, which I put into play. And I think that's vital. Yeah, a coach can be amazing. It can be super motivational, can be super well built, can be just a phenomenal physical specimen. But if they cannot transfer the information from their brains to you, they're a useless coach. So I think you've got to have systems in play. You've got to treat it like an actual business. So yeah, I mean, this is a really long topic I could go on about and give you specific examples, but just two broad examples. The first one is just sort of basic kind of timekeeping and being on top of things, treating it really seriously. Second thing is have systems in place. You know, make sure you have a predictable, understandable system so your clients feel taken care of every step of the way. And it starts with onboarding. Right. Next question. Where are we? Dylan. Hi. So this is a troll question from Dylan. He says, how do I get as handsome as you as an advanced natural? I don't know. God. Am I handsome? I don't know. I feel like I'm less and less handsome the older I get, but I don't know. I'll leave that for the comments. I used to be when I was younger. But anyway, Ben says, what is your thought on the vacuum pose and is it worth it to add into a day-to-day routine? Yeah, so the vacuum pose has got a long history in bodybuilding. So back when I was younger, I used to read a lot of magazines from the 50s and 60s. I used to collect them. And there were two very common things that people did back then, which were, I would say, a lot more controversial now. And that is breathing pullovers and vacuums. So these were things that would help people to grow a larger rib cage. And I actually did these for a long time. I felt like they made a difference. I mean, who knows? They're kind of falling out of favor now. But the idea was you would do breathing pullovers, and they could be traditional pullovers like with a dumbbell, or they could be just holding onto a pole in front of you and just lifting your rib cage up. You do that, and then you would practice the vacuum. And the idea was it would not only tighten your waist, but it would also increase your rib cage because it was all about the illusion of size, you know. And if you have a large rib cage and a small waist, it gives you the illusion of more size. I mean, I thought it helped. So I think there probably is something to it. I think there's more. I think what's more important though is making sure you have a low amount of visceral fat in your stomach region. That makes a bigger difference. So fasting probably makes a much bigger difference than doing vacuums. But I think vacuum does teach you stomach control. So there is that. So yeah, it's part of a long-standing historical tradition. If it's valid now, I don't know. Possibly. Right. Next question is Leon. Thoughts on AI that nowadays create workout routines and track your macros by taking pictures of what you eat? Yeah, so Leon, I'll tell you a little bit about this by talking about a different topic. So as you guys know, I used to be a school teacher many years ago now. Probably I've not been in a classroom for 8 years. But anyway, when I first started teaching, there was a course which was designed to be completely computer-led. It was designed to be taught without any teachers. That was the idea. It was a qualification back in England known as AIDA, A-I-D-A, and it had multiple variations. One was called CIDA, C-I-D-A, and one was called DIDA, D-I-D-A. But anyway, these were IT qualifications, which in the late 90s were designed so that you didn't have to have a teacher in the classroom. They were all created, all marked, all assessed online. This was back in the late 90s when everybody was obsessed with, AI and not AI so much back then, but everybody was obsessed with technology and the upcoming internet revolution. So there were a group of people in England who created this qualification, and schools were paying thousands of pounds to buy this qualification. And the whole draw was you could sit kids on this qualification at lunchtime or after school. You didn't even need to have a teacher present. They could just do it. So you could just get any old teacher to babysit them. Now, that is essentially like what you're asking, AI generated workouts and all that kind of stuff. That failed massively. And for the reason that nobody thought of. They thought of every possible avenue for how this might fail, except for the one thing which the entire thing was built on. And that is people like human contact. It's that simple. So what do I think of it? I don't think it replaces coaches. I don't think it replaces PTs. I don't think it replaces communities online where you have like-minded people. I mean, if there's anything which to convince you guys of what I'm saying, look at the rise of social media. Social media would not be so popular if we didn't want to engage in communities of actual people. We still need that as human beings. No matter how amazing AI gets, we still need human contact. So I think they're fine. I think they're fine. I don't think they'll replace coaches or coaching. From what little I've seen, I also don't think they're particularly well done either. So anyway, let me just look at comments. Paul, thank you for that question. Yeah, Paul, I'll cover that really quickly. Yeah, actually, I've played World of Warcraft since the beginning. So it came out when I was at university, and I wasn't really a gamer back then, but I got into it because an ex-girlfriend was playing it at the time, and she was really excited about it. She was a real hardcore kind of gamer. So I started it. I've just been playing it ever since. I gave up the game a long time from, I think it was 2014 to about 2020. I didn't really play. But in 2020, you guys know what happened, the lockdowns and all that kind of stuff. My wife suggested I try it again because there wasn't much to do. I was getting bored. I was getting restless. You remember that time. It was a very difficult time. So I picked it up again in 2020, and I was terrible at it. I was really bad. And I slowly kind of got better. And now I'm at a pretty decent level, considering how much I play. I do okay. But yeah, back in the day, I was reasonably good. My claim to fame is I had a top 10 pass. Only a real nerd will understand what I'm about to say, but this feels so nerdy saying this, but my claim to fame, Paul, was that I passed top 10 out of Europe for Patchwork. Do you remember original Patchwork and Nax? That was my claim to fame. That was my peak of gaming back then. And I was young. I was like 25, 26. But yeah, I was okay. Anyway, moving on. Thank you for all the congratulations, but let's go on to the next questions. So Tyler says, congrats, Faz. Thank you. And here's my question. How do you think jobs that require prolonged standing and frequent lifting impact recovery? So for perspective, Tyler is a PT. He's a very active PT, has a lot of business, does really well for himself. So I think in the short term, hydration needs will be far more intense. A guy like you, Tyler, would, and anyone who works, say, a physical job, let's say you're in construction, I think hydration is super important. Okay. So I would say for you guys, you should probably hydrate as much or maybe more than I do. And hydration, just to cover that again, is not just water. If you overdo water, you'll actually make things worse. You sweat out electrolytes, you sweat out salt mostly. So you need to have a much larger, I would suggest, based on, medical advice, much larger salt intake. I personally take in a minimum of 5 grams of sodium per day. That is all sources. Sodium in my food, but also added. That's important because you sweat out sodium, a lot of it. That's the electrolyte you sweat out predominantly. Now, on top of that, I also think it's important to have a large amount of magnesium. I try to aim for about 800 milligrams of magnesium, which is actually double the RDA, because I find that helps to keep me just relaxed, At the end of the day, if you've had a really hard training session, you can be slightly frazzled and like, or you can get, say, restless leg syndrome. I find a lot of that is ameliorated by a high magnesium intake. So I aim for 800 milligrams of magnesium from all sources. So if I'm eating a large, say, plant-based diet, which I do have a lot of plants in my diet, I'm not vegan, but I do predominantly eat whole foods. So I get a lot of magnesium, but then I do have to substitute additional magnesium. So I aim for 800 milligrams of magnesium. Rather than aim for 800 milligrams, what I would suggest is just take an audit of where you currently are. Go to Chronometer, plug in your numbers, see where you currently are, and see what that amounts to. Generally speaking, most people will have to supplement magnesium to get up to higher levels. So I would definitely recommend getting at least 400 milligrams because I think that's the RDA. I aim for double that because that makes me feel good. It's good for general health. My blood pressure is amazing, and that seems to be a good amount. So that's the second thing. I also suggest calcium, also very good. Again, I aim for about 800 milligrams of that. That's a good amount. Potassium, you should be getting enough from food. And then water on top of that is about a gallon, I would say. So in the first instance, if you're working a physical job, hydration is number one. You will sweat a lot more than you realize. And sweating is not just when you have beads of sweat. It's just whole body perspiration, which you can't really tell is happening. So any fatigue you feel, a lot of that will be just you sweating a lot more. So that's the first thing. Second thing is your overall caloric needs will be a lot higher. Don't be surprised if your maintenance is into the 3000s. I mean, I'm not very active, but I'm quite big. I train a lot. I train hard. My maintenance is maybe 3.3 thousand calories. So don't be surprised if you're a smaller guy and your maintenance is that high as well. So I've trained guys who need to eat up to, I've got a guy at the moment, shout out to Damien. He eats about 6,000 calories on a daily basis, and he's barely gaining weight. He's a very lean 100 kilos. So activity makes a massive difference. He works in a hospital, like, ferrying people around all day. So activity can make a huge difference. If you're active and you've got good hormone levels, your caloric intake will be sky high. So hydration, caloric intake, I think, is a huge thing. Apart from that, I would probably look at your training and maybe go for more of a low volume approach. So, high volume is the current standard. And if you speak to somebody about volume, the conversation almost always begins and ends with 10 to 20 sets. You don't have to do that much. You can reduce back and just see what you get. I mean, even as little as 6 sets per body part per week is fine. I've done that before and it works pretty well. So cut your volume back, see how little you can do while still gaining. So those are all tips for somebody who works a very physical job. Hopefully that helps. Right. McBen asks about the dumbbell pullover. So actually, I think, McBen, I kind of covered that in the last question you asked about vacuums. I've got to say, I'm personally not a fan of dumbbell pullovers. It's very difficult to get a large dumbbell into play. Like if I do a dumbbell pullover, I'm going to have to use something like 60 kilos, and it's just awkward to put that into perspective. So if you're using a 30 kilo dumbbell, yeah, I guess. But I prefer a machine pullover. Or if you don't have that, just do an undergrip pull down. It kind of feels like a pullover. So honestly, not a big fan. It's the kind of thing which would work while you're still not very strong. But like Ben, you're getting quite strong now. You posted that, was it 3 plate aside, stiff leg deadlift, I think, or RDL? You've gotten a lot stronger since I've known you. So I'm sure you like the dumbbell pullovers, but at a certain point, you're not going to be able to do them. It's just impractical. When I was younger, everybody did machine pullovers. And if we didn't have access to a machine pullover, you did a close grip pull down. So not a huge fan. Barbells and Beijnitz asks, you stumble upon a Gains Genie with the ability to change anything about the fitness world. No world peace, only gains. What are your 3 wishes? Okay. I'm going to give you guys a World of Warcraft example. Okay. Because this is I guess it's an aspect of human nature which I think traverses many different platforms. I just wish people would be a little bit more keen on listening to their own reality and not be persuaded by what everybody's saying online. That would be my wish. Now, the example from World of Warcraft is this. This is a really geeky example, but essentially, in World of Warcraft, you get different characters, right? And every season, there are some characters which are stronger than others. Now, nowadays, the game is 20 years old, so there's very little difference between the top character and the middle and the bottom character. It's maybe, 5% difference, very, very small amount. So practically speaking, it makes a bigger difference in terms of how good you are at that character or if you enjoy it or not. So if I pick a character who's at the bottom, but I really enjoy that character, I'm probably going to get better results than a guy who picks the guy at the top, but they don't really enjoy it. And that is an example where people will chase the meta. They will chase what is said to be the absolute best of the best with no thought to what is best for them as an individual. So in lifting, we get this with the research on like length and partials, 52 sets per week, all that kind of stuff. I would rather like people to experiment on themselves. And again, I don't have an issue with length and partials. Like, it's fine. If you want to do them, if you want to do high volume, go nuts. My issue is more with people not really experimenting on themselves. For some people, it works. For the guys it works for, they're usually young and injury-free. Very rarely do you hear of guys who are like 45, 50 years old doing really well on length and partials and super high volume. It's just, the guys who it works well on are young and fairly intermediate. And the thing is, anything works at that stage. If you're 25 years old, fuck, dude, like anything is going to work. So I would just rather like people to, I would encourage people to experiment a bit more themselves, use their own logbook as the truth, and then have a bit of humility. I think if you are 25 and you're getting gains from something which you're getting a lot of pushback on, understand people might be wrong, you might be right, or it might just be you're young. It's like the David Goggins phrase. If a lot of people are telling you you're fat, they could be being mean, or you could just be fat. So I don't take a lot that very young people say seriously about the way that training should be, whether they're researchers or not. I would encourage people just to spend a bit more time thinking for themselves. Like I say in my channel all the time, your only loyalty is to your results. It's not to me, it's not to any kind of research. Just do what works for you. And that's a bit of a cliched phrase, but it's so important. I'm not going to be able to give you 3, sorry, but hopefully that one's enough. Next question. Tudor Training says, what is your thoughts on the new trend of extreme micronutrient-dense healthy eating? Organics, grains are bad, etc. What do you think is a good takeaway from these diets for health and performance? Or what do you think is unnecessary and over the top? It's a good question. It's a very nuanced question, so thank you for that. I would say there's a lot of good takeaways. I think whole foods are generally a good idea. But I think where you have people who go really extreme, they really start to demonize anything which isn't a completely whole food. My general thoughts are these are usually problems. These are usually people with health problems. That's my general experience. Maybe that's kind of calling people out, but the guys who I've seen and who I know personally, who harp on and on and on about like particular diets, generally speaking, they've got health problems. They might not admit it, but you see a guy who's sort of mega into healthy eating, whatever. He's either got, it's usually a case where they have some kind of either physical or mental health problem. So whether it's an eating disorder or whether it's an actual physical issue. Like, I'll give you a great example of this, Eddie Abu. I mean, by all accounts, nice guy, but he has had, and he does have some fairly bad health issues. I mean, I'm pretty sure he's the guy who checked his blood sugar levels recently, and they were pre-diabetic. That's not good. I don't care how old you are. So this is why he's been doing these fairly extreme things. But the problem with that is they then say this is what everyone needs to do. They get scared. They start to do really extreme things, and they say, look, that's what everyone needs to do. You can heal yourself with food or whatever. Whether the thing is carnivore dieting, whether it's extreme fasting, whether it's bulletproof coffee, even even to go on the other extent, and like these extreme IIFYMers, like these guys who do the mukbangs where they eat loads of food. I know a guy, he's a British guy. I'm not going to give his name out because you'll know who he is, but some of you will be able to guess. He's a British guy, English guy, who does, he's an English mukbang bodybuilder. You'll know who I'm talking about, pretty famous. He has got some horrific mental health issues associated with food. I know because I know his coach. So in almost all cases, all of these extreme guys, they've got major physical or mental health issues. This is why, like, I just post a lot of moderate stuff. Moderate stuff doesn't get people's attention, but it's what the majority of you need to do. So that's what I think, Tudor. There are some positives. I mean, there's nothing, not everything Eddie says is negative, for example. Yeah, eat whole foods, but his over-reliance on like carnivore is disastrous. And it just plainly doesn't work. It's the same with that British guy, Carnivore Cam, I think his name is. He posted his blood work recently, and it was really embarrassing. He posted his blood work thinking it was amazing. He was pre-diabetic and his cholesterol was horrific. He then did a 180 and added carbs back in literally the day after. But it was just embarrassing because he posted his blood work up to say to everyone, look how healthy I am, not realizing his blood work was horrendous. And this is a guy with 200,000 subscribers on Instagram. But he had absolutely no idea what he was looking at. He was looking at his blood work thinking, I look great. It was awful, like really bad. So these are guys who are out there with massive followings with fairly major health issues because they're ignorant, they've done things in the past, they don't know what they're doing. This is the fitness industry, though. It's the extreme outliers, the ones who get all the attention. Those are usually the guys with the biggest issues. That's what you guys need to watch out for. Anyway, next question. Before that, let's just look at some comments. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. Awesome. Hi, Craig. Thank you for the congrats. Yeah. And yeah, Craig pointed out high volume equals high cortisol, diminishing returns. That's also the case. You know, you're looking at natural bodybuilders. Yeah, super high volume will create a lot of inflammation, which is going to impact your recovery. And yeah, I would rather see somebody do the lowest amount of volume they can to get progress, but pour extra time and extra energy into cardio, stretching, a more holistic approach. I think that's going to do a lot better for you. Okay. Henok says, do you have any advice on increasing bench, especially for somebody with longer arms? Yeah, I think longer arms, you need to be specifically careful of elbow stress, in my experience. In terms of advice, the advice is still pretty similar, though. I think you need to bench more often. I definitely think with the bench press, you're going to get much better effect if you bench more often for longer. So let's just take a typical example of an upper lower. So for some of you guys, let's say you're in the 80 kilo range for bench, which is like early intermediate, and you're struggling. You might be at the position where your lower days look different. You might squat and leg press and RDL one lower day. On the next lower day, you might leg press and deadlift. So alternate lower days. But you are more incentivized to keep benching on both days for longer because the bench responds very well to practice. So with a bench press, less variation is better to a certain extent. Keep doing less variation as long as you gain from it. Don't look to expand your training. More complexity of training should happen when it's necessary, not just as a matter of course. I think for lower body, it doesn't matter as much. But for upper body, you need repetition, repetition, repetition. So one of the reasons I don't recommend doing the overhead press, because the overhead press can impact your ability to handle more bench press volume. So as a net result, it can actually be a negative. In the beginning, if you're looking to just get up your basic bench press strength to increase your whole upper body, you're better off foregoing the overhead press and just pouring a lot more attention to bench pressing variations. I think as a complete beginner, by all means, do the overhead press, chest press, pull downs, rows. But then as you get to that intermediate range, you may need to pull back on the overhead press, just do a lot of benching. It would not be too much to do, for example, 16 sets of all bench or bench variations across the week. That's generally a good recipe for success. And then as you get stronger, you may need to vary the reps. You may need to have a heavy day where you do benching for predominantly 6 to 10 reps, a slightly lighter day where you do benching for between 8 to 12 reps. And that way you have a natural periodization for the week. And that's when you might also eventually change exercises. So generally speaking, as a rule, in the beginning, 2 heavy days, a lot of benching. As you get more advanced, 2 heavy days, 2 hard days, 1 heavy, 1 light. And then as you get even more advanced, that's when you might have different days. You might say bench on one day, last and press on the other day, and vary it that way. That's what I've seen to have worked as a fairly robust system for my intermediates, almost guaranteed to work. It's something maybe I might release something like a bench specialization program. Anyway, I'll go back to questions and I'll take the rest from the Q&A later. Matthew Thompson says, favorite tea brand and favorite biscuit to go with. Yeah, I mean, favorite tea has got to be Yorkshire Blend, 100%. Favorite biscuit, I'm not a massive fan of biscuits, but I would say just I'm pretty basic, just a chocolate digestive, I think. It's about as English as you get. All right, next question. Barbara Bryce says, do you think people specialize in strength too early or even at all? Do you think it's realistic for people to be able to bodybuild their way to classic 3, 4, 5? Good question. No, I don't think people specialize in strength too early. I think the problem we have now in 2024 is people don't specialize in getting stronger enough. I think in the beginning, you almost have to get stronger first. Again, you're looking at good form, nothing too silly. But the focus in the beginning should be, should be getting strong. I think later down the line, you can benefit from high volume work. I think in the beginning, though, you've got to get your basic level of strength up. It's not necessary in the beginning to go higher in volume or higher in reps. Pretty much all of my beginning clients are looking at lower volume routines with lower reps in general, just easier to get stronger. So I think nowadays you should be specializing in strength in the beginning. Now, with regards to the second question about do you think people can bodybuild their way to the classic 3, 4, 5? In theory, yes, but the issue is it's a lot easier to strength train your way there. So people will start doing things like very, very low reps or like power building approaches to get to 3, 4, and 5, and ultimately they will be disappointed with their size gains. So then they'll turn around and go, I got strong, but didn't get me the physique I wanted. It's like, your bench press was heaved, your squat was using knee sleeves and wraps and not all the way down, and your deadlift, well, it's not hard to get a 5-plate deadlift. So no, I think there's a misunderstanding. 3, 4, 5 done in bodybuilding form will net you a good physique. 3, 4, 5 done with loose powerlifting form is not going to get you a bodybuilding physique at all. And you can't expect it to. You can't train like a powerlifter or a power builder and expect a good physique. Like, it's moronic. Pick a route. I've said this from the beginning in my channel. And, for anyone out there who's listening, like if you are a power builder or a powerlifter, you're not going to get a good physique lifting 3, 4, and 5. 3, 4, and 5 done with bodybuilding form, bodybuilding rep ranges, that is much more likely to net you a good physique. Like, I'll give you an example. So my best ever bench press was 4 plates, so 180 kilos, 400 pounds. Now, I did that with a powerlifting form. There's no way that I'd be able to do that with a bodybuilding form, like nice and slow, wide, elbows out. I'd tear my pec off. So when I was benching 4 plates, powerlifting style, I could probably bench maybe 160 bodybuilding style. 150 maybe, no heave, no arch, no leg drive. Yeah, I would say probably 160, 3.5 plates. Let's for sort of argument's sake, 3.5 plates, right? Which means for a set of 10, I would use maybe 2 3/4. So, I was a 4-plate bencher with specialized technique, but in terms of muscle, I'd probably be repping for a set of 10 less than 3 plates. So the 3, 4, 5 plate standards are really very good. Like they're very, very challenging. But it does mean when you're at that level with bodybuilding form, you will have a tremendous physique. I think the problem is people see those numbers. And this is what I did. I saw those numbers. I chased those numbers. I even got involved in powerlifting. So I did reach those numbers after 4 years, but I wouldn't say I had a particularly great physique then. I mean, I was big, but I think people are in a rush to hit those numbers. I think they should be seen as a long-term goal, and you should try. If you want a good physique, train in the way, train in the manner which is going to get you there. Like a bodybuilding approach. I think the issue is people just get confused. They want to look good, and that's their main goal is to look. I think from what I've seen, Bryce, most people just want to look good. Most people aren't that bothered about strength. If you really put a gun to the head, they're not that bothered. Most people just want to look good. They want to look big. This is my experience. Very few people really, really love strength. Most people want to get stronger because in the back of their minds, that's their route to looking good. So for those people, which is the majority of people out there, train like a bodybuilder. Like, yes, you're going to get stronger. That doesn't mean train like an absolute wuss, but use proper bodybuilding form. Don't swing your rows. Don't do cheat reps. All the things that power builders do, don't do that. Okay. So yeah, just train. If you want to look good, train like you look good. Again, most people just don't want to be that strong. They really just want to look good. They think they want to get strong because they've been told strength equals mass. And to a certain extent it does. But if you're cheating your reps, if you're doing low reps on purpose, you're not going to get the right result. I mean, it's just basic common knowledge. Right. Johnny Boz says, realistically, can you make good long-term gains in a garage home gym? If so, what piece of equipment would you consider as a requirement? Okay. He's asking if he's doing himself a disservice by being loyal to the garage gym life. Johnny, no. No, I don't think you are. Johnny, first of all, thank you for being such a loyal subscriber. You've been watching for years. No, you got to remember, I did some of my best lifting in my home gym. I lifted in my home gym from 2007 to 2014. So many, many years, 2007, 2010, I did my wizard routine, and that was pure bodybuilding, all in my home gym. 2010, 2014, I did my best powerlifting. That was all in my home gym. So no, you're not doing yourself a disservice at all. I think in terms of things you need to watch out for, I think you have to be a little bit more careful with exercise selection, maybe more variety, maybe even more variety of reps. Like, you don't have to necessarily do a variety of exercises. It could just be a variety of reps. That's important. But yeah, in terms of equipment you need, during those years, I had a power rack, bench, a good quality barbell, Texas power barbell, lots of plates, 300 kilos worth of plates. At the time, that's all I had. I had a leg extension and a leg curl attachment, but that's all I had. So that entire setup in 2007 cost me about $3,000. Yes. Now it would cost me a lot more. I still have the home gym. I'm not going to sell it. But that's all you need. You don't need anything too basic, too more extreme than that. If you wanted to get something else, I think maybe cables are a good idea. Or even if it's just a cable attachment you can fit to the power rack, that's a good idea. The other thing which might be a good idea if you can afford it and afford the space is some kind of leg press hack squat combination. You get them these days. You get a leg press, and if you turn it around, it's a hack squat. That's probably a good idea because squats themselves can be quite limiting. And it would give you a good bit of variation for your medium days, your light days, all that kind of stuff. But no, my wizard routine was all done in a home gym. And my tactician routine was all done in a home gym. I also had some weight belts, chinning dipping belts, stuff like that. But yeah, that's about it. But no, Johnny, it's where there's a will, there's a way. Slee says, congrats, coach, well deserved. How do you progressively overload in a busy gym when you have to do the lifts in different order? Okay. Yeah, that's a good question. So I would say first exercise of the day is the big one, right? So that's the marker of progress. Let's say you're doing upper lower or a push-pull legs or a body part split, whatever you're doing, right? The first exercise is the major decider whether you progress that session or not. Like, I'll give you an example. I did a push day today. The first exercise was the Atlantis chest press. That was my main gauge of how I'm doing after my holiday. So I've not been to the gym now for 2.5 weeks. Came back today, first session, lifted the same weight. So I've lost nothing. So that's also something to bear in mind. Like, you don't lose a lot of strength if you're well trained. But anyway, so if I couldn't get onto that first exercise of the day, I would wait, because that first exercise is crucial to let me know where I'm at. Now, every other exercise after that can be interchanged, because all the rest of the exercises will be influenced by fatigue. So I can't trust my performance of them anyway. The next exercise was another chest press, and an overhead press, and a close grip bench press. They're all variable. The first exercise is the big one, which impacts my chest, my shoulders, and my triceps. If I'm up on that, I'm good. Everything else can be varied. So progressive overload, your first exercise, bear in mind, is the one which is unfettered by fatigue. That is the most important one on a day as a gauge for progress. If the first exercise has gone up and the second exercise has gone down, that's still a win, because when you're fresh, you're up. If the second exercise goes down, it doesn't matter. It means maybe you pushed really hard on the first exercise, or you're a bit more depleted that day. You don't have as much glycogen. So in a busy gym, wait for the first machine or the first equipment. The rest of it, change it out. Doesn't matter. Yeah, but the first one, super important. Okay. And also the other thing is, if you're in a busy gym, I would be more likely to do something other than full body. For that reason, you want to get that first exercise in. So an upper lower, first two exercises, massively important. Get your press in, get your pull, and then the rest, you can change it. On a lower body day, get the first knee flexion movement in, get the first hip hinge done, and you're good. Okay. Right. So squat curl deadlift says, congrats on a milestone. It is well deserved. Thank you very much. My question is, what would be your number one tip for an up-and-coming trainer coach? Okay. It's another coaching question. Yeah, good question. I think the first priority is not make money, is not get clients, is not go on social media and make flashy reels. Your first priority is your clients' well-being and success. So just do a good job. Do a good job. There are no tricks. Do a good job. Do what's necessary to get your clients the result they need. So my one-to-one coaching packages, they include everything. Everything is relevant. Everything is relevant. Very, 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 very rarely do I do, say, diet without training or training without diet, because they're both interrelated. If I'm doing somebody's training and somebody else doing their diet, like, I'm going to need to know what's happening, because it's all interrelated. So do a good job. Do whatever that person needs to get success. That's your number one thing. And I know that sounds obvious, but I in practice, I don't see it as being obvious, because when you're in business, there are so many PTs out there who are more concerned with, like, their reels. Like, I'll give you an example. There's a lady who PTs at the gym that I go to, and she puts up reels where she's filming her clients work out while she's looking at herself on the phone. Like, she'll film herself, and in the background her clients are working out. And she puts music on it, and it looks very sort of cool, I guess. But I can't help but thinking, why are you not looking at your clients? Why are you not correcting their form? Why are you not encouraging them? Why are you not doing what you should be doing as a PT? I think there's far too many PTs and coaches who are far more interested in what they look like and what their clients appear to do, rather than getting results. So I think the number one tip is get your clients results. That's what they're paying you for. They're paying you their hard-earned money for a result. Like, if I hire a plumber, I want him to fix the freaking toilet. Like, I don't care about his social media presence. I don't care about anything. I've hired him for a job. Like, if somebody hires me, it is my number one focus and goal to say, right, that goal you laid out for me, the reason you've hired me for, we are going to achieve that. That's the only thing that matters. Even to the point where I might have to pull them back from their own ideas. I might say, look, I know you've got an idea for this, but you signed me up for this job. This is the most important thing. We are getting this result. Nothing else matters. Oh, but Faz, can I train like this? Like, right, you can, but you charged me to get you this result. this is the route towards that result. So the first thing is, bear in mind always, your number one priority is the result. I'm doing it live. So could I get tea? Thank you. So yeah, you should bear in mind that's always the number one thing. Get a result. That's your focus. Reels and advertisements, all that kind of stuff is fine. But ultimately, if you're not getting the right result, if you're not treating your clients correctly with the respect and the love and the care they deserve, you're never going to have longevity in the game anyway. Okay. All right. ATDYEAM says, congrats. He's a new subscriber. I had a question about balancing hypertrophy training with other sports. How would you go about this? For me, my sports are MMA, which I try and do 4 nights a week. That's tough. That's very tough. MMA is very tough. And sometimes I rock climb on the weekend too. I'm currently doing an upper lower split in the mornings 4 times a week. I feel like I'm handling it, but I don't know how sustainable it'd be. Yeah, so when I was at university, I did MMA. I did a branch of fighting called Vale Tudo, which is roughly translated means no holds barred. It's Brazilian in origin. It's mostly grappling. So I was grappling 3 nights a week, 3 afternoons a week. It's very demanding. And I was young. I was like 22, 21. But it was extremely demanding physically. I had bruises all up and down my arms from all the grappling every time I went. So I found it to be very, very challenging. I had to cut back on my lifting a lot. So the first thing I would suggest is you're already getting a certain amount of volume per week. You've got to cut the rest back. So the whole 10 to 20 sets, just forget about that. Like I've been saying to you guys all along, look at what the minimum is you need to do to progress. Now, depending on your age, your genetics, your advancement, the minimum you need may be as little as 2 sets per body part every few days. Like literally, it could be that little. You could be progressing on, say, 2 hard sets of squats on Monday, 2 hard sets of leg presses on Thursday. If you can add weight to the bar, that means you're getting bigger. So those 4 sets is nowhere near the 10 to 20 sets people talk about. But if that's what you need, if that's what you do, great. Do that. Okay. That's hugely important. Hugely important. So no, that's not too specific at all. I mean, I think just look at how little you can get away with, because you're balancing a lot. Like 4 nights of MMA is freaking rough. Like I know, I did it for 3 years. It's tough. And rock climbing on the weekend, that's a tough sport as well. So just pull back. You can do a lot. And I would say you might even get better progress than somebody who's lazy and inactive. But just do the minimum in terms of lifting and just do it hard. Less training, harder training will do well. Okay. But ultimately, there are a lot of benefits. I mean, all my hybrid guys make a lot more gains than my guys who are more sedentary office workers type of thing. My strongest, and I don't mean strong as in physically numbers, but the clients who get the best results, they tend to be guys with a really good aerobic base and do a wide variety of sports. So the guy you see in my Instagram stories, Paul, who's always posting his lifting, he does a tremendous amount of cardio. I mean, the guy's 90 kilos with abs, huge guy, but he does tons of cardio. My firm belief is that cardio does something in the body. I think it helps the muscle building process somehow. There is no interference effect. If anything, it's the opposite. Thank you, Ben. Cheers. The lovely wife. So, thank you, sweetie. So yeah, if anything, I think they're synergistic. So, as long as you can recover, I think it helps. Right. Next question. TH Manoy says, what's a good rate of progression for some standard lifts, like bench, squat, pull-up for intermediates? I'm asking this because someone might benefit from making changes to speed it up in case progression is considered slow. Yeah, I mean, any progress is good progress. I would say one of the problems that I have with people on the British scene, guys like Jordan Peters. I hate being critical of Jordan because I really like him as a person, and he's done a lot for the British scene. But one thing he said in his stories, which I think is completely counterproductive for natural clients, natural trainees, and most of you guys are naturals, and most of you guys have heard of Jordan Peters. The thing that he said in his stories is that you should be able to progress weight every session. That is not true. As a natural, it's not true. You might not be able to progress reps every session. You might not be able to progress every session as an intermediate advanced lifter. Not going to happen. And if you don't progress, that's not a failure. Sometimes you need longer to get used to a weight. I would say when it comes to bodybuilding, beginners, you can probably add weight every session. Intermediates, maybe every other session, and then build your reps up. As an advanced guy, you may need to stick to the same weight for 3 or 4 sessions before you go up. So when it comes to rate of progression, you've got to remember it's not just the muscles, it's also the joints, the tendons, and just getting more comfortable with the weight. Like, I'll give you an example. My first day back from lifting from the holiday today, not been to the gym for a few weeks, 2.5 weeks. I did 200 kilos on the incline chest press, on the Atlantis incline chest press. I'm probably going to stick to that weight now for at least 2 more sessions, maybe 3. Now, for me, that's like 5 more weeks. I'm not going to add weight. I'm just going to get better at the exercise. That's okay. I'm a pretty advanced guy. I'm pretty strong, pretty big. That is okay. So the more advanced you get, the slower your progress will be, and you can stick to that weight, get better or get more reps. When you're an intermediate, yeah, you don't have to add weight every session. But again, I think overall, never mind about the specifics about intermediates, advanced. Overall, one of the biggest misconceptions about progressive overload is this idea you have to get better every session. You don't. Go in, do the work, wait for the adaptation to occur, and then you'll go up in weight. Like, I got 6 reps today. The idea is next time I do 200 kilos, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then, okay, I've got 1 more, 7. You're not trying harder. It just comes, it happens. Okay. So that's it. Just let it happen. Okay. You still have to establish a really, really good high level of workload, but just wait for the adaptation to occur. Okay. So yeah, I think sometimes when these questions happen, people don't understand that progression, it should just happen, like if you're doing everything right outside the gym, eat enough protein, resting up, it should just happen. You'll get to the same weight and you'll be able to do 1 or 2 more. Just allow that to happen. Do the work, wait for the adaptation to occur, and progression will just happen. Okay. Yeah, I know I'm making it sound really simple, but it's not easy, but it is that simple. You're not looking for anything else. Okay. Super Domino says, congrats. What's your opinion on intuitive eating when cutting? It's doable. I think it's one of those things where you have to be pretty in tune with your eating. I think the way to do it is to cut out foods. So as an example, let's say, this is a very, very basic example, but let's say you do an off season where you're eating predominantly meat and rice, okay? And maybe some vegetables, like a variety of vegetables, sweet corn, broccoli, carrots, a wide variety. More calorically heavy vegetables and less calorically, whatever. Now, over time, if you're trying to lean out, that would turn into, instead of rice, potatoes, okay? And instead of carrots and sweet corn, more broccoli and cauliflower, okay? Now, eventually, that might look into maybe even no potatoes and just all vegetables and leaner meats. So you have this progression of food types, and you would change the food type. At the end of the diet, you might just be eating lean chicken breast, white fish, whey, broccoli, cauliflower with some fish oils for fats. So that's the way intuitive eating works. You cut down on food choices. So, I mean, you could argue that's not intuitive. I don't know. But then I guess you'd have to define, what are you going to cut down on? Are you going to cut down on portion size as well? That's going to be pretty difficult, because when you get lean, hunger goes up. The way you can make it work is you still eat to satiety, but you just pick the appropriate options so that you are eating less overall calories. There is no way to make intuitive eating work where you just eat whatever you like, blah, 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 and things just magically work out. You have to reduce calories somewhere. Right. I'm just going to cover some cues from the chat. Well, that's a lot of questions. Let's just do a few. Robert says, hey Faz, what would you consider a good strength standard for bodybuilding? Would be something similar to 1, 2, 3, 4, but for rep work. Yeah, so for reps, I did this recently in a video. I worked it out. You have the rep calculators online. Let's just find one. Let's do it together while we're here. Rep calculator. 1 second, guys. I'll put this up on the screen so you guys can see. Okay, here we go. Can you see this? Yeah, okay. All right, so I've just picked a rep calculator. Let's say let's do deadlift, 500 for 1 rep. Now, that would give you 8 reps for 400 pounds. So just do stuff like that, guys. Like, it's really easy to work out. Now, I'm not saying these calculators are completely infallible. Like, they have their issues as well. But all I'm saying is, that's a reasonable standard, and it's close enough. But that's what I would suggest. Just pick a rep calculator. So that would mean, let's go back to sharing the video. Let's see. So yeah, that would mean a 500-pound deadlift would give you 400 for 8 reps. So deadlift will be 400 for 8. Let's look at squat. So instead of 400 pounds, that would give you 8 reps with 320. Okay, 320 for the squat. And for the bench, 300-pound bench would be blah, 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 blah. 8 reps at 240. Okay. And a 200-pound overhead press would give you 8 reps at 160. There you go. So teach your mind to fish, right? So those calculators are how you would determine what reps you would get, whether you do 8 reps or 6 reps or 5 reps from that 1 rep. Okay, so let it not be said that FazLifts gives you generic answers. That is a teach man how to fish answer. Danger, thank you very much for the compliment. Nezi, thank you. Drew says, I have odd eating habits. 1 or 2 times weekly, I have been consuming excessive amounts of specifically sugar. I'm young and lean, but what could my insides be suffering more than my outsides? I mean, if you're lean, you're fine, mostly. I suppose the only question I would have is, people have different interpretations of what is lean. Like if you're genuinely lean, I can't really tell from your picture, but if you're genuinely lean, you're probably okay. And if you're young, you're probably fine. I think the issue is more if you start to get very overweight, then what's going to happen is that means you're eating more calories than your body can use effectively. So all those extra sugar calories will be converted to glycogen, and that might be swimming around your bloodstream, increasing your risk of diabetes. But if you're at a lean weight, well, what that means is your body's using those calories and using that glycogen effectively. So more than likely, your blood sugar is probably fine. But, again, with these kind of things, I suggest blood work is probably a good idea. But from what you've said, I don't think that's a major problem. So I wouldn't worry about it, especially if you have ED tendencies. I wouldn't worry about it. Don't stress yourself out. Nezi says, what do you think about training back and legs on the same day? Nezi, I've seen this routine before. So people do back and legs one day and then chest and arms the next day. I mean, I think, yeah. So the back and legs comprise about 75% of your total body mass. Legs is about half. Back is, in total, more than half of your upper body. So you're looking at about 75-ish% of your body on one day, 25% of your body on the other day. I've seen people promote this routine before. For me, it's a lazy routine. Now, yes, it is somewhat true that routines don't matter. Just do whatever you like. But it really seems to me the domain of people who are just like really lazy and will half-ass their leg days and half-ass their back days. You're basically putting together a pull routine with a leg routine and then doing push on its own. I mean, I've seen people recommend this. I think it can only work for beginners or early intermediates or people who just don't take lifting very seriously. People are all talk. There are a lot of those people in the space. All of those people will be better off doing a full body or better off doing upper lower. Most of those people don't do an upper lower because they're concerned about how much upper work they have to do, but they'll happily do back and legs together. It shows you their motivations. They're not motivated to do back and leg work, really, seriously. A serious leg day will leave you crippled and walking out the gym, wobbly. A serious back day should leave you crippled. To do back and legs on the same day, it always points to me somebody as who's not serious about the gym, or as a beginner can get away with it. And if they are a beginner, they'd be better off doing full body anyway, or an upper lower. So it is somewhat true that no routine matters, but there are some routines which are just stupid. And I don't mean to offend anybody with that, but yeah, just stupid. Like, that's a stupid routine. Torso limbs is another stupid routine. That's just a recipe for elbow issues. Doing upper body on one day, legs and arms on the next day, back to back. It's 4 elbow days, back, in a week. It's pure stupidity. It's only going to work for beginners. Bill, if this is the Bill I'm thinking of, Bill's an ex-client of mine. Hey, Bill. Hi, Faz. Currently dealing with joint pain from overuse. Is Wiz routine good to reduce stress on joints? Yes. If it's programmed correctly, yes. Why are you getting elbow pains? What's the joint pain from? Well, I said elbows. You didn't say elbows. What is the joint pain from? What is the issue there? Have you identified what's going on? If you are Bill, who's an ex-client, message me on Telegram. Talk to me. But yeah, Wizard is good because it is full body done intelligently. Like I was saying about the previous routines, which aren't done very well. Full body done intelligently. So you have a heavy day, a light day, which is basically a recovery day, and then a medium day. So you have 2 sessions where you're getting each body part hit. So you're looking at a good frequency, but less time in the gym, and a recovery day. It is a fantastic routine for people who are suffering with joint problems. I mean, you got to remember, I did the Wizard routine when coming off my hamstring injury. That's why I did the Wizard routine. If I never hurt my hamstring, I wouldn't have done that routine. I did it when I basically gave up on powerlifting for a while because I was injured. So it was so good at recovery for me. It actually healed my hamstring, given time. So it's fantastic. It is a good routine. I definitely recommend it. Who this man says, what tricep exercises has greatest carryover to pressing movements while taking shoulders out of it? It's a bit of a weird question. I mean, I would say close grip bench. You're not really going to get a tricep exercise which has good carryover to pressing if you're not pressing. So, yeah, I don't know what to say about that. And he also asked, if somebody isn't a bodybuilder, is it better for them to close grip bench and press for longevity, as flaring elbows is hard on joints? Oh, I see. Yeah. Yeah, maybe. I do all of my pressing with tucked elbows. Just feels comfortable. I think this is probably a question where there's going to be some variance on arm length. I'm more longer limbed, so for me, tucking the elbows just keeps my chest, my shoulders safe. So I think it depends on leverages. It'll be more of an individual question, but yeah, as a rule, probably quite safe. But then you're also getting more elbow stress, so you've got to worry about that as well. Hit Sweden says, are you natty on TRT or PEDs? No, I am natty. I'm natural, 100% natural. Daniel says, you're the man, Faz, been running your free pre-PL. Good, glad you like it. Nezzy says, not a new subscriber, just on my alt. Nezzy, I haven't received. Oh, no, I have received, yeah. Okay. Josh says, what kind of activities would you recommend outside the gym to help with stopping injuries, supplementing, building work capacity? Currently with physio to fix a chronic rotator cuff tear. Oh, Jesus. Sorry to hear that, Josh. Josh, as part of my coaching, I recommend everyone does some cardio. So pick a cardio mentality that you enjoy. And also you warm up carefully. So one of the reasons I tend to favor lower volume routines is because my clients are doing other stuff outside the gym. So you're going to do a warm-up protocol, which includes rotator cuff work every time you go to the gym on upper body days. You're going to do lower body warm-ups. You can see my videos on what I recommend. So on any given session, I would rather you do lower overall volume and more warm-ups, more stretching, more cardio than just slam the volume. So in terms of like stuff outside of the gym, I think you're referring to stuff outside of lifting. Make sure you're doing your stretching, make sure you're doing your cardio, and make sure you warm up properly. Like, these are basic things which you should be doing, which would vastly reduce the chance of getting a rotator cuff tear. Yeah, Josh, I mean, good luck with that. If you need anybody to consult with, hire me for a consultation and let's talk about that a bit, because I hate to see people getting injured, because more than likely it was avoidable, and that's a shame. Right, I'm going to go back to questions from the Q&A because that's quite a lot. Okay. I can't pronounce this name. I think it's just random. Anyway, he says, I love upper lowers. I'm on your barbarian program. My upper days are starting to get long. And my lower days are kind of short, but still hard. Do not put arms on lower days. You're going to develop elbow problems. Just reduce the volume on your upper days. You don't need as much volume. You don't need very much. Pull back, pull back, pull back. Also, time your rest periods as well. But the main thing is pulling back. You don't need an arbitrary amount of volume. You just need enough to progress. Like if you do a week of work and you got better next session, or let's say you got better over the course of next month, it's enough. Who gives a crap about 10 and 20 sets? You don't need it. So pull back. I'll tell you another thing. People generally do way too much arm work as well. Like you do not need a lot of arm work. If you're doing upper lower, you don't need a whole bunch of arm work. I would suggest, let's say, as an example, let's say you're doing 6 sets of chest, 6 back, 6 delts, mostly like lateral work. You don't need 6 bis and 6 tries. 3 bis, 3 tries. You've already got some bicep and tricep work. And the 3 bis and tries will be lighter work. You know, you've already got heavy pressing. You've already got heavy pulling. That's covered the heavy work. The bis and tries have got hit heavy anyway. You don't need like front delts and side and rear delts. Just remember your heavy press, your heavy pull will cover a lot of territory. You don't need to slam a whole bunch of stuff on top. You're just going to get elbow problems and shoulder problems. Pull back, pull back, pull back again. Particularly pull back on your arm work. You don't need a whole lot. And your lower body days, if they're short, they shouldn't be that short. Like, try harder, push harder. So a good upper body day, as I say, it could be as little as 4 sets of chest, 4 back, 4 shoulders, which are mostly isolation. That's 12. Then maybe 2 sets of arms, 2 sets of tries. So 16 sets, where the majority are isolation type exercises. Maybe half and half. That's not too much for most people. And time your rest periods. Make sure you're getting the most out of your gym time. So yeah, do not put people who recommend torso limbs, even coaches, they just don't know how to program upper lowers. I know coaches who hate upper lowers. It's because they don't know how to program them. So they tell everybody to go on these inefficient splits, and it makes them sound clever because it's different. But no, there's a reason why pretty much every top coach does a combination of full bodies, upper lowers, push-pull legs, and bro splits. They work. These splits where you do legs and back on one day, which is just stupid. And like torso limbs, they're stupid. Like, I don't know what else to say. Don't do them. Right, next question. Rico, congratulations. Would you ever go back to full body training? So yeah, it's a good question. I'll be honest, you know what does confuse me though? People ask me about my own training. I know you guys want to know because, and I do get the question. I'm not saying anything bad about that, but my training is mostly irrelevant for you guys because look at me, right? I'm 43. I've been lifting for 25 years and I'm pretty advanced. I am not the demographic you guys are for the most part. Like, honestly, hands up in the chat. Who else is in their mid 40s, way beyond 3, 4, and 5, and has been lifting for 25 years? I am a very different lifting population. So what I do is not representative of what you should do. So my split is going to be different. It's very tailored to me. So as a question, I could go back to full body. I could. But the warm-up time required for every body part would be extreme. I'd be in the gym for 2 or 3 hours. But the point is, that's not you. You can warm up for considerably less time. You would need less warm-ups. To get to my 200 kilo first set today on the incline chest press, I warmed up with 1 plate, 2 plates, 2.5, 3, 3.5, 4, 4.5, and 5. I did 8 warm-ups. As well as that, I did a warm-up routine. Like, that's not you guys. So I could go back to full body. I could, because it's a very good routine. As I say, it's served me well. I mean, those 4 years between 2007 and 2010, some of my best years for lifting in terms of physique. I looked tremendous. This is why I love full body training. If you're young, if you're not yet like stupidly strong, it's really, really good. Minimize the number of days in the gym, maximize the frequency, maximize the effective volume. It's just a great way to train. It's a great way to train. I could, but I just wouldn't, because for me, again, my demographic, not practical. But yeah, I mean, for my older clients, I do recommend things like push-pull legs, body part splits, stuff like that. The older you get, the stronger you get. You will have to pay more attention to warm-ups. So that's when this kind of stuff becomes valid. But you don't want to avoid full body training if you're a beginner. Like beginners, do your full body, progress onto upper lower, maybe push-pull legs. That's the vast majority of people. Those are the three big routines. You're not going to see me release routines, for just so I can sell books. I do what's best for you guys. That's what's best. A lot of these guys who have these funky routines, the torso, limbs, the back and legs, they just want to sell books. Look at the websites. They've got 20 books to sell. You don't need 20 books as a coach. There are a number of routines which work. Don't stop. I think people they get greedy. Okay, basement bodybuilding, my man, Landon. If by any chance you're not signed up to Landon's channel, please do. He's a really nice guy. Got a lot of time for him. We've done one live together. We did one more video together. Super nice guy, and just seems like a really good dude. So he says, "What are your 3 favorite videos you made since you started the channel?" And congrats. Some of my favorite videos, they're the community videos. So NH did this thing a couple of years back where he put together a whole compilation of lifting advice. I think it was lifting advice, like top 10 lifting tips or something like that. And he put together a whole bunch of people. It was me, Landon was there, Paris, Bald Omni Man, Jeffrey, Stan Strength, Carell was there as well, and a few other guys. And he put them all together in a compilation. And some of those are my favorite. I do really enjoy that. I'm at a point now with my coaching and my business where I can appreciate, and I have a lot of time for other people who are doing my thing. Like I'm not hyper competitive. I want everyone to eat. I want everyone to succeed, and I love that kind of stuff because we all come together, we all chat. A lot of us guys will talk behind the scenes anyway. Like I talk to Paris a lot, I talk to Jeffrey a fair bit, but we were all on a good kind of understanding. But those times when we come together, I think is really nice. Freaky D has got a video released, I think, soon, where he's talking about body fat percentage, and I'm on it. So he contacted me, contacted Basement, Jeffrey, and Paris, I think. So it's all 5 of us on that video. So that'd be kind of cool. So those are some of my favorite videos when we all come together. In terms of the others, I don't know. I don't know actually. Those I'll leave it as one. Those types of videos are my favorite. So I think that one when people come together is good. But there's been a few of those videos. So there was also one where I was doing a video reply to some. I think I did a video reply to one of Basement's ideas once, and I've done one to Jeffrey's ideas and Paris' ideas. Those are some of my favorites. I think I just like the community feel of it. It's nice. This kind of work can be quite lonely, so it's nice to hear from your peers. So that kind of stuff is my favorite. Right, next question. WBR1991 says, any advice for newborn dads regarding lifting, eating, cutting, and goal setting? I think it's going to depend on your kid. Some kids, particularly in their first year, they sleep very well. They're not old enough yet to get bored, so they sleep very well. So I think on others, they'll just be up all night for whatever reason. So it kind of depends on the kid. But I think what I would say is realistically see what you are capable of. On the one hand, you don't want to ignore your duties. You brought a child into the world, take care of it, give it love, give it attention, particularly in those early years. Play with it, stimulate it mentally. But also you don't want to use this as an opportunity to just say, right, be lazy. We all have a lazy streak. We all have like a bit of blaha in us, right? We all have that where, you think, it's Sunday morning, I don't want to go gym, I'll skip it. But you don't want to succumb to that either. Just realistically look at what you can do and what you can't and set the goals accordingly. And then just pull back, Feel free to pull back on a number of lifting days. Feel free to be a bit more relaxed about your eating. But I still recommend staying on some kind of regimen because you need that physicality, you need that energy to raise your kids as well. Like I know a couple of guys in the gym, certainly in my old gym, not so much in my new gym, who just blame everything on the kids. They'd say, how's your lifting going fast? And I'm going, yeah, lifting's going fine. How's yours going? Oh, you know what? Kids are doing my head in. I've only been to the gym once this week. And you're like, oh, man. First of all, it's depressing when people talk like that, I don't want to hear that stuff. But secondly, it's like some of these guys, they'll just blame their kids for everything which is wrong with their lives. And I just think that's got to be bad psychology. So my advice is, genuinely pull back as much as you need to feel like you are capable of fulfilling your duties, doing your training, but also having some time for yourself as well. Okay. George, I can't believe how few subs I've got with such great content. I know. Share the views, share the love. How would you advise someone who gets elbow pain easily to change his training? Asking for a friend. George, more than likely, what's happening is all of the exercise you do, which use your elbows, like any chest work, any shoulder work, any tricep work, the combination of that is probably too much for your elbows. It's a recovery problem, George. That's all. So let's say, George, you've got long limbs. Okay, so whenever you do a press, you get a lot of elbow, you get a lot of tricep, and you've got a friend of yours, your training partner, who's got short limbs. He's a barrel chest, short arms. Like when he presses, it looks like this. Okay, he's not going to get a lot of tricep work. You are going to have to bear that in mind. Some of your chest work will have to be isolation work. Some of your shoulder work will have to be laterals, not presses. You've got to pull back on the totality of all your pressing because it's too much for your elbows. Your triceps probably take up a lot of the effort whenever you press. So bear that in mind, pull it back. All elbow pain is, it means you've exceeded your body's ability to recover. That's it. It's just sore joints which aren't recovering. It means your weekly volume for your elbows is too much. This is the thing we don't talk about very much. Well, I talk about it, but very few people talk about is the recovery of the connective tissues. So you guys, we all talk about muscle recovery, but tendons and connective tissues have a recovery component as well. So the one thing is volume, but also the second thing is protein intake. Protein intake is super important. This is why I generally recommend higher protein intake, because the protein intake recommendations we have are based on muscle protein synthesis. We're not just trying to recover the muscles, are we? We're trying to recover the connective tissues, the tendons, the ligaments. That all has a protein content. That all has a protein requirement as well. So do the internal organs. So if you're just eating the muscle protein synthesis requirements, you're undershooting everything. So higher protein is a good idea. Also, just reduce your volume of elbow-related work. That's all it is. It's literally all it is. Oh, I say one more thing. Load management. Okay, and this is related to the volume. Give yourself some time at a weight before you go up. Just because you got the reps doesn't mean you have to go up. Give yourself 2 or 3 sessions at the same weight and then go up. You are allowing your connective tissues time to recover. That's all it is. Yeah, George, elbow pain sounds like it's chronic, but it's a really simple issue. It just means you're simply exceeding your body's ability to recover from the workload, or you're underfeeding it, usually protein. Chris Leach says, currently on a 4-day upper lower bench, squat, overhead press, deadlift. What does that mean? I don't understand that question. He's written, currently on a 4-day upper/lower/ bench press /squat /overhead press /deadlift routine. Okay, I'm guessing he means he's got 1 day for each. Okay, I'm with you. Okay, so the 4-day routine, basically, he's got 1 day for each. Okay, I'm with you. I wanted to focus on bench press, but my shoulders are happier when I overhead press. What kind of protocol could I help to use to help the bench most? Just started 5x5, 1 a week, then close grip bench, feed up afterwards. He's pretty strong. Well, this is the thing, man. This is what comes down to, for me, doing what you want to do rather than doing what you need to do. You may need to sacrifice a little bit. If you're trying to get a better bench press, and this guy's already benching 3 plates, he's already benching 3.5 plates aside. If you're trying to get a better bench press, and you're trying to get, say, a 4-plate bench, it's going to require a certain degree of specialization, just the way it is. What you're doing at the moment is you're not willing to give up on things which make you feel good for things that you want past a certain point. So either accept very slow progress or bite the bullet, specialize on the overhead press or specialize on the bench press and go back to the overhead press later. You can still overhead press lightly if your shoulders feel good doing that, that's fine. But, you can't have everything. You can't have a good, fast rate of progress when you're advanced on everything. You're going to have to specialize. So at this stage, if you're going from 160 and you want to get to 180, specialize on bench. Conversely, if you're at, say, 100 kilos for overhead press, and you want to get to 120, specialize. Okay. So yeah, Chris, this falls in the realm of what I want to do versus what I need to do. You can't have everything when you're advanced. You have to specialize in an area, especially if you're a strength trainer. All right. Next up, Alash Kashaves says, congrats, Bas. How should I distribute my calories in a bulk when training in 2 days, 2 days full body per week? Should I eat the same amount every day? I'm aiming for 1 to 1.5 pounds per month. Okay, interesting. Okay. So basically what he's asking about is calorie and nutrient timing. I would argue, let me give you the, I think you could probably maybe eat a bit more on those days. That would make sense. If you're training hard and heavy, those full body days might have a pretty severe caloric burn, maybe even 500 calories extra. That's what I've seen. My own heavy days, when I was at my peak of the wizard stuff, when I was doing the really high volume stuff, those days I estimated would burn about 600 to 800 calories. Now, I estimated that based on my caloric needs, not based on like a watch. It was an actual real life based on my calculations, how much I was eating versus my weight. I estimated they burnt about 800 calories. So it is possible to burn a lot with full body training. I would say eat a bit more on those days, maybe an extra 500 calories, and then balance the rest of the calories around the rest of the week. But then the other answer is, if you're training 2 days a week, yeah, no, I'll leave it there. I think that's the best answer. Okay. Lazarus Lift says, hi Faz, I've been running the wizard for over a month now in a really heavy light medium setup. My only question is, how will I know that I need to add volume and eventually an extra day? Very simple question. I know that in my book, there are stage 1, the stage 2 to stage 3. Those are stages that I did over the course of 4 years. So I just want you guys to understand, I did those mostly out of necessity. I maxed out how much I was able to gain at 3 days. So I went to 4. I maxed out 4 and I went to 5. I did those for necessity, not because I wanted to. That's what I would suggest to you. You will know when you need to add volume because you'll tap out. Like, I'll give you an example. I hard stalled on a 90 kilo bench press in my first 3 years of training. I only got to 140 when I upped my volume a lot. So you will know because you'll genuinely be stalled, despite good nutrition, despite sleep, all that kind of stuff. You will just need more. And in general, what I found is intermediate is when you need the highest volume. So again, like I was doing something like 20 hard sets of pressing per week to get to a 150, 140 bench press, in kilos, 3 plates, 3.5 plates. I needed a lot less volume to get to 4 plates. But that intermediate hump, you just need a lot of volume. So yeah, the need will be results driven. Yeah, it's a very simple answer, really. If you think about it that way, again, your only loyalty is to your results. The problem with doing too much too soon is you do expose your joints to a risk. Now, to be completely honest, I probably did do a bit too much in the wizard routine too early on. Like I probably went to 4 days before I needed to, but I was young. I could get away with it. I was only 26, 27. So if you're in your mid-30s like you are, go up when performance dictates. Do not go up too early. You will suffer. Okay, because like we've been talking about recently, a few questions ago, your joints have a recovery component as well. Okay. But yeah, Lazarus, I'm glad you've been going well on the wizard. I know you mentioned a couple of times you're doing well, so I'm really glad you're well and that's working well. I think it's a good routine for you because you were a powerlifter, I think, or at least powerlifting orientated. This will give you more muscle and you'll feel better on the joints. That's exactly what I did as well. Jordan Jacobs says, how do we go about managing interpersonal conflicts with a significant other? So he's talking about like arguments and whatnot with significant other. It's a good question, Jordan. I'm going to talk about this quite a lot. I saw this question. I was looking forward to answering it. Yeah. So let me give you a few kind of words of wisdom from a married guy. You are going to have disagreements. You're going to have arguments, right? But one thing I need you to understand is you should never be out to win an argument. You never win arguments. When you're a couple who are looking to go places together, you never win because there is no individual in that. Like, if you win, you lose the next day because she'll be resentful. If I lose an argument and she wins one, I'll be resentful. You should never look to win arguments. That's not what it's about. Now, the reason I know this is when I was younger and before I was married, I had a string of girlfriends like most people do. And because I'm good with words and I'm relatively intelligent, it is easy for me to win arguments. I'm just being very honest. This is young Faz, okay? It's very easy for me to win an argument if I want to. I can logically move my way around and I can win an argument. And when I was younger, I thought that was the thing to do, because I won. It has a negative effect though, because after a while, if you're winning all the arguments, it's almost like you win the battle, but you lose the war, or you're still losing the war. Because if you're arguing all the time, you're losing. That in itself means you're losing. So winning an argument means nothing. You have to create a solution which allows you both to move forward together. That's the goal. So the first thing I would say to you is when you're trying to manage conflicts, you are not looking to win. You are looking to get a win-win. You both win and move forward together. You look to come out with a better understanding of the other person. Why, or let's say they did something you didn't like. Why are they doing that? You have to understand why. You can't just say, look, fucking don't do that. You're pissing me off. No. Try and understand why they're doing it. And then also get them to understand how that makes you feel. And also, more importantly, why it's counterproductive for the relationship. Like, I'll give you a great example, right? Very common problem with couples is they don't know how to communicate properly. So as a result, one person can't communicate to the other person what's making them annoyed. Either they don't like confrontation, or when they do communicate, they communicate very poorly. As a result, resentment builds until they argue and it's like, rah, 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 rah. No one feels good about that. I mean, afterwards you get the makeup sex and, then they post on Facebook and go, oh, we're such a happy couple. And it's bullshit. That is so toxic because nothing has been achieved. And over time, if you carry on doing that, those are the worst kinds of relationship because that resentment builds. If you have like 10, 20 years of resentment, it's super hard to undo all that. It's impossible. It's like a snowball which just builds negativity. You can't unravel all that. So whenever there is a conflict, you have to get to the bottom of what that is for both people and make sure with the solution, you both feel good about that. And you both work from the perspective of what is best for the relationship, not what is best for me, what is best for her, what is best for the relationship. Like I was saying earlier about clients, your number one objective is to get the result for the client. Because when you're in a coach-client relationship, the number one overriding goal is the result. It's like when you're at work, you're working for a team. The number one focus, what draws the team together is the goal. What are we trying to do, team? What are we trying to improve? What are we trying to make more money? We're trying to do more this, whatever. That's the goal. Your individuality falls apart. And that's the thing I think a lot of people struggle with when it comes to relationships. There's too much I. There's too much ego. When you're in a relationship, there can be no ego. You have to do what pushes you forward. Now, that encompasses both. It means you can't be too aggressive, but it also means you can't be a bitch either. Like, you can't be softly spoken and not express what's on your mind because you'll feel resentful. In my past, I've been more likely to fall on the side of being outspoken, more wanting to win arguments. And because of who I am, I've always attracted women who are probably more on the submissive side. I don't mean like any weird sex thing. I just mean like personality-wise. And I've not been great with that because that's been their go-to. I've kind of taken advantage of that and won arguments, won the right to do what I want to do. That's not the route for a productive relationship. It leads to dysfunction. It either leads to the girl getting pissed off and saying that's it, or eventually it leads to them feeling like they're losing their own way in the relationship, and that's not good either because it's harmful for their personality. It makes them kind of interdependent on you. And I've had that before as well, and that's difficult. Either way, you have to retain your individuality, while acknowledging you're in a relationship. And the way to do that is have the relationship at the forefront of your mind. Whatever the solution is has to move you both forward, which demands good communication, honesty, and openness, and a willingness to put your ego aside. You're not there to win arguments. You're also not there to lose arguments either. So don't give in and go, "Oh, right, okay." Like, you know, that old adage of happy wife, happy life. Fucking bullshit. Fucking bullshit. The man has to be happy as well. You have to be happy too. Happy everyone. Happy life. Okay. If you're just saying yes, dear, all the time and acting like a bitch, well, you're not going to be happy either. So this is why it's so difficult. I don't think people are ready for that level of conflict resolution in their lives. I don't think they're ready for it. I think people are much happier to ignore a problem, smile through it, but that's the worst thing. It builds resentment. And 10, 20 years down the line, you're going to be one of many couples who just hate each other. So, yeah, you have to be able to talk and communicate your ideas. You have to be able to listen. Again, I know all this stuff is like a massive cliche, but it's so crucially important. Strip away your ego. There are no winners. There are no losers. You both move forward together. The relationship wins or the relationship loses. And if you're arguing, the relationship is losing. So you have to turn that into a win. There is no you. There is no her. There is you as together. Okay. And again, that means you can't be overly aggressive. You can't be a bitch. You have to be in the middle, moving forward, do what's best for both of you. Okay. Hopefully that gave you a bit of an insight. But again, it's something I could talk about for a long time. I have a lot of thoughts and ideas about relationships because I've had a lot of experience, in my life. I've never really been without a relationship. So I've had a lot of thoughts on why things have failed in the past, and I've poured all that into my marriage, and that's why I have a good marriage. So yeah, I have a lot of thoughts on that. I'm happy to talk more about that in the next Q&A. The complete art form says, can you make weighted push-up your horizontal press if everything else hurts? Firstly, I'm not a massive fan of weighted push-up as a primary press because there's a limit to how much you can load it. But secondly, if everything else hurts, I think you got to figure out why it hurts. It's not going to hurt forever. Figure out why you're in so much pain. Fix that. More than likely, people are in pain because they refuse to take a break, refuse to relax, refuse to take some time off and heal. They think healing means doing more work in the gym. Healing initially means rest. After that might mean more work. But if everything hurts whenever you train heavy, you need more rest. Because you shouldn't be training heavy. So, no, I don't think that's a good idea. Fix your pain first. Fire Tree Hawk Path. Well, that's quite a name. It's a very hardcore name. How many carbs do I actually need? And he in brackets, he writes, they're icky. I'd rather eat saturated fat all day. Okay, interesting perspective. A little bit yikes, to be honest, my friend. Yeah, I suppose if your perspective is that carbs are icky, then this is a question of personal preference. So there's not really much I need to say here. You don't need to have my permission to eat saturated fat all day. If that's what you want to do, go for it. I do not recommend that. I think it's a bad idea. I kind of get the feeling you're one of those guys who are more into sort of the carnivore, like keto style of eating, which is fine. But again, if you want to eat saturated fat all day, I think you probably have a very warped view on what nutrition should be. I would suggest maybe getting some blood work done and having a look at your cholesterol and getting a bit of a wake-up call in terms of what you're doing to your health. So I think any answer that I would give you, probably you wouldn't listen to anyway, because you have this emotion. But even before that, I would say, look, you're asking me a question about how you should eat, but your deciding factor is emotion. I can't logically convince you to do something you are emotionally set against. So if you like to eat like that, go for it. Who am I to stop you? For everybody else, I don't recommend that at all. I think it's a very quick route towards poor health. No Boundaries Burn says, in your experience, is there any truth to ultra high volume for calf and forearm development? I've been training them normally with about 8 to 10 hard sets. I've been making the same typical progress I do with other muscle groups. That's good then. It's good, isn't it? I don't think there's any truth to ultra high volume at all. No. I think it's the same as for every other body part. ultra high volume for calf and forearms only really works because the joints tend to recover easier with calf and forearm work. But even then, you're risking, tearing your ankle ligaments, your Achilles, and you're risking messing up your forearms. I mean, you can benefit from ultra high volume in every area, like the side delts, for example. You can benefit from that for certain periods of time. But that doesn't mean that's exclusive to calves and forearms. In my experience, you still need to train heavy, you still need to progress. But this is the thing I don't understand about your question. You're saying you are progressing, doing the same thing with everything else. So why would you change? I mean, if you're progressing, if you're adding weight, if you're getting size, you're progressing. It's good. Like eventually when you get to say 300 kilos for your standing calf raises with good form, a pause for 3 seconds at the bottom and a full contraction, your calves are going to be massive. So what more do you need? I think you are risking some kind of overuse injury by doing ultra high volume. This is kind of this is a prime example of what Martin Birkin refers to as fuck arounditis. Like something's going well, you're progressing, but you want to change things. Why? Just keep doing what you're doing. And as you get stronger and stronger, you'll get bigger and bigger. Now, the only thing I would say is for calf work in particular, just make sure your form you're using a form which allows you to use the least weight possible. So with my calf work, I pause for 3 seconds at the bottom and I go to full contraction and I use 10 to 15 reps. That makes me use a weight which is lighter than what I would use if I did continuous reps or I didn't pause. So try to limit yourself. Add in these delimiters like the pauses, the slow negatives. Add those in. Make sure you're not just pounding tons of weight on. And then just progressive overload, like everything. The reason I have my calves is because I went through a period of time when I lifted in my first couple of years where I did a lot of really heavy calf raises. The first gym I went to, the first proper gym, I worked up to a ridiculous amount of weight on that machine. Me and my brother both did. We both developed really good calves. So my calves were built in those first couple of years because I went ridiculously heavy. That's how you do it. And I wasn't finessing my form quite as well as I do now. But again, I was younger, so I could get away with it. So yeah, with that, I would just say, first of all, it's working, don't change. But secondly, just make sure you're being ultra strict and consistent with your form. SL Brown says, how would you program an upper-lower style 6-day split? I would say reduce the volume. Yeah, you don't need much. You got to remember, like your first 1 or 2 sets per day are the most effective ones. So if you're doing training multiple times per week, you could get away with as little as 2 sets per body part per session. So 6 sets per week. I think this is the common mistake that people make when they do, say, high frequency routines. They just smash the volume. It's like the opposite. You might even want to go less volume because every first exercise you do, every first set you do is going to be more impactful. Like one set is going to give you a lot of gains. 2 or 3 sets after that, each progressive set gives you less and less gains per set. So just remember, every time you hit it on an upper lower 6-day split, 1, 2, 3 times, that's going to be 3 very effective bouts. And you've got to recover as well to do the same thing again. So I would say lower the volume and also implement the heavy, light, medium system. First 2 days heavy, second 2 days a little light, third 2 days medium. Perfect. And do low volume. Do as little as 2 sets and just watch yourself progress. Remember, it's all about lifting heavy weights. It's all about horse cocking the weight. It's not about doing a predetermined amount of volume you can't recover from. If you're getting stronger, it's working. I think we're near the end of the message. There's been a lot of questions. I think it was like 35 questions. Do you think there's any value in at least one point in your life pushing 20% or above, even 25% body fat when trying to achieve a certain body weight? If I want to weigh 200 pounds and I'm 170, should I at least get to 200 pounds first and then cut back to 180? He said 200 pounds at 22% body fat. That's not that fat. That's, if you're a genuine 22% body fat, that's not that fat. The problem is most people's 22% is like 35%. So then I would say no. No, I mean, with this one, I don't think there's any purpose to actually getting fat for fat's sake. Bulk hard, bulk 30, 40 pounds, but just understand a lot of that's going to be glycogen, water, just fluff. This is what I don't agree with when people say 10-pound bulks over 5 months. I mean, you could not eat for a day, take a big shit, and you'd be 10 pounds lighter. So it's the kind of stupid nonsense which very naive and not very good coaches say, really. So I would say no, put a good amount of weight on, 30 pounds, 40 pounds, especially if you're young. But don't aim for a particular body fat percentage. That's crazy. Just try and keep a semblance of what you're doing. Like, I'll give you a good example of this is Alex Leonidas. He went from 155, I think, to 145. Right, he went up from about 150 to 190. He still had abs. That's what I mean. You can go up a lot. As if you're starting very lean and you're ending and you do it over a long period of time, you can go up a lot. Now, that doesn't mean he gained 20 pounds of muscle, but a lot of that will be just fluff, extra glycogen, all that kind of stuff, and that's okay. So, but I don't think you should aim for a particular body fat percentage. No, I think that's kind of crazy. Stay on the leaner side. If it's hard for you to get above 20-25% body fat, that's a good thing. Take it as a blessing. Just keep doing your bulk cut cycles. Okay, JLYW1CP says, can a person with short muscle insertions have the same amount of muscle as someone with long ones? Yeah, of course, absolutely. But it just won't look as good. I mean, a great example of this is Dorian Yates. So Dorian had to be 30 to 40 pounds heavier than Flex Wheeler to beat him. Dorian's a guy with, in terms of muscle insertions, they're not that great, but Flex muscle insertions are amazing. So Flex at 220 beats Dorian at 220, but Dorian at 250 beats Flex at 220. That's the difference. But if Flex went up to 250, he would beat Dorian. So yeah, you can have the same amount of muscle, you just won't look as good. That's bodybuilding illusion. Long question. Hi Faz. My question is, how would you recommend a person having a hard time growing the chest? I'm currently over 3 years into training. My chest is hardly growing. I'm training with high effort until failure. 12 sets a week. I've tried high volume. My chest is growing very slowly. I'm making progress on the reps. Yeah, so what you've said here, I think it's Andre. What you've said here is quite telling. It may just be a perspective problem. You said here you're hardly growing, but you are growing, and you are making progress on the weights. Yeah, I mean, it may just be the case that I would need to see, Andre. I would need to see your physique. I would also need to see your bench. I think with some people, if they are genuinely progressing, well, firstly, you're progressing. Okay, don't get impatient. You're progressing. Don't change anything. Eventually, it'll come good. Second thing is, you may be a guy who gets a lot more shoulder or tricep from your pressing than, say, chest. That happens. That happens. Not everyone gets a lot of chest or equal amount of chest from their benching. So you may just get a lot of triceps. If that's the case, then at a certain point, you may want to substitute some chest volume, some pressing volume for more like isolation work or dumbbell benching. You may want to pick variations where it's safe to flare your elbows a little bit, but your shoulder still feels good. Like dumbbell benching for me, if you do it proper full range and you're using the dumbbells effectively, you just get it all the way down and your elbows are flaring a bit, those are pretty good. And I find them to be pretty okay on the shoulders. Whereas the bench press with the barbell, if you flare your elbows, it might be hell on your shoulders. You never know. So I think first point of call is I would say just don't worry too much. Like you're getting stronger, you are growing, it's just a bit slow. Okay. But the second thing is you may want to adjust your exercise selection to target exercises which allow you to grow the chest more effectively. So for me, weighted dips were really good for growing my chest. I made weighted dips my primary exercise for about at least a few months when I was a beginner. My first year of training, it's pretty good. I just completely stopped doing bench press and I just did weighted dips, and that worked really well. I gained a lot of chest size. I also my upper chest minor, my pec minor started to grow a lot as well. And then I went back to benching and I carried on benching. So Andre, you may want to change your exercise selection to suit more chest dominant moves, which are still safe for you, and progress on those. That may be the case, I would say. But everything else is all the same. I wouldn't recommend high volume, pre-fatigue, all that kind of crap. Just exercise selection. It's very important. The rest of things get a bit too complicated, I think. And drop sets and different splits aren't going to do anything if your exercise isn't targeting your chest. The main problem, at least what it appears to be, main problem is your current exercises aren't hitting your chest as much as you would like. So the solution is change them. The solution isn't, high volume pre-fatigue, all that kind of stuff. Okay. Oof, thankfully, that's the end of those questions. Let me go back to the live Q&A chat and I'll see what else we've got. Robert Wood says, how do you gauge when you're sufficiently warmed up for an exercise? For dips specifically, it feels like I'm either doing too much or too little where my shoulders hurt, or too much where my reps tank. I think there's a lot more danger in doing too little because your shoulders will hurt. I would never start with dips as a main exercise anyway. I would always recommend doing something like incline dumbbell bench before dips. I never did that. Even when I was younger, I hated doing dips as a lead-up exercise because they're just too difficult to do without pain. So, Robert, I would say do a proper warm-up routine. Do my warm-up routine, the one that I recommend, the push-downs, the curls, the rotator cuff work, and then start with incline dumbbell bench and then do dips, and you'll be much better off. Trust me. Who this man says, oh, he's replying to someone else. Osama, my man, thank you very much on the 8K. Congratulations. B says, how many compound exercises would you recommend for a single session? I would say 3 or 4 is about right. Wiam, my French friend, my very handsome French friend, says, greets Faz and congrats, thank you. Glock says, do you think there's any... Oh, this is the question I answered. Okay. Orestes says, what do you think about flies for chest? I think this falls down to a very individual answer. I'm not a big fan personally, but I have programmed flies in for clients because they like them. I think if you're going to do them, you have to make sure you're doing them in a way which is safe for your shoulder. That's the biggest problem that I see. And the reason I see that problem is people insist on doing flies like this. You don't want to do flies like that. Do flies like you're hugging a tree. Elbows low, or you're not a tree, you're hugging a person. I don't know why I said tree. Tree. Who the fuck is hugging trees? Right, so do flies like you're hugging a person. Your elbows low. That keeps your shoulder safe. Okay, elbows low. So they're fine. But again, it's individual. It's like I was saying about exercise selection. Your exercise selection is a very individual thing. You have to pick exercises which suit you well. Okay. Josh Heyman says, how would you approach returning to the gym after a long time off? After my second kid and both under 3 took a year off. Josh, you got to start as you're a beginner again. Yeah, you got to. Josh was pretty strong before he left to take a year off. He did 150 in the squat for 3x10 or 3x12. You got to start from the beginning, my friend. First day you go back to the gym, do your warm-ups, stick 20 kilo on the bar, see how it feels. Then stick 40 kilo or a plate or half a plate aside, do some reps, see how it feels. Plate aside, do some reps. Go up to the point where it starts to feel challenging and stick to that weight, do 3 sets on that weight, and then just progressively over from there. One good thing is it will come back a lot quicker, but just work slow. Let the warm-ups be your gauge. Every warm-up, once you rack the bar, think to yourself, right, how did that feel? And then go from there. Like I did that today. So I haven't trained for 2.5 weeks, which I know is different from your year, but 2.5 weeks, same principle. So I went up very, very cautiously today because I wanted to see where my body started to tap out at. Now, lucky for me, I was as strong as it was 2.5 weeks ago, or 3 weeks ago. But yeah, for you, it's going to be different. Like you're not going to be able to lift that much after a year off. Go up to what's comfortable. Use your warm-up sets as a gauge. Okay. Drew says, silver era lifting has been very inspiring to me lately. Especially Steve Reeves, very inspirational physique. Are there any things you can explicitly point to as advice or practices from time? Sorry, let me read that again. Are there any things you would explicitly point to as advice or practices from that time to steer clear of? Oh, from the silver era, like Steve Reeves? No, not really. I mean, you got to remember, my wizard routine was essentially from that era. That's the only thing I would avoid is, I think it's not the era itself. I think a lot of people who talk about that era, they give the wrong impression of how they trained. Like Steve Reeves didn't do the same full body routine 3 times a week. Reg Park didn't do the same full body routine 3 times a week. That would crush him. They did the full body routines like I wrote in the Wizard. So if you want to know what they actually did, buy my Wizard book. That's how they actually trained. And I know that because I learned that style of training from Casey Butt, who is who was well read on the era. So that's the big thing. It's not anything wrong with the silver era. It's the way that the silver era was reported. It was reported that they all did the same thing 3 times a week. Come on. I don't care how tough they were in the 50s. Nobody's benching 3 plates aside 3 times a week for bodybuilding intensity. Doesn't happen. So that's the only thing I would change. Yeah. Again, just listen to me. Buy the book if you can afford it. It's only 15 quid, or watch my full body videos if you want an idea for free. Don't do the same heavy thing 3 days a week, especially if you're quite strong. S. Lee, thank you for the congrats. Matt588 says, do you think there'll be any substantial changes to the way we build muscle, or have we peaked? No, I think we've peaked. I mean, look at the last 10 years. The last 10 years of bodybuilding research has added nothing but confusion to the industry. And that's not me being like overly critical of like, oh yeah, you know, these science guys. But realistically, what have we learned? What have we learned? Length and partials? Really? People were doing those years ago. Jason Hurt was doing those 15 years ago. He was a pro bodybuilder. What have we really learned? We've learned nothing. I think we peaked. I think we peaked with Coleman, to be honest. Coleman and Cutler probably, and Yates. Yates was the first. He was the first to put all the pieces together. Look what Yates did. Sensible frequency. Training body part every 4 or 5 days. Cardio. Incline treadmill cardio. A sensible diet. Every meal he had vegetables, fruits, high amount of protein, high amount of carbs. Sensible. Reasonably low volume. He wasn't like super low volume, but he was reasonably low volume. Don't believe the stories. I think we peaked with Dorian, to be honest. I don't think Dorian's routine was even that different from Cutler or Coleman. In fact, Dorian's routine was pretty much identical to what Cutler did. Cutler would always go up in weight, and he classed those as working sets. Dorian classed the last set as a working set. It's the same thing. The only major difference between Cutler and Coleman was Cutler wouldn't train to failure mostly. Yates would. But apart from that, the routines were remarkably similar. Coleman, again, very similar. He trained slightly more frequency, but he periodized. He had a heavy rotation and a light rotation. I think we're pretty much peaked. Train a body part every between 3.5 to 5 days. Do as much volume as you recover from, which is probably a lot lower as you get more advanced. And nutrition is pretty straightforward. High amount of protein. I would go for 1.5 grams per pound of lean body weight. High amounts of fruits and vegetables. Low amount of saturated fat. Do cardio, but do that in a sensible way. You know, treadmill, incline walking, elliptical, step mill. This is the basic bodybuilding formula. This is how it's done. That's how it's done. All the rest is all just tips and tricks. The splits all seek to minimize overlap. Yeah. Cool. Josh says, thank you, Faz. It was due to playing cricket for many years. Let me just remind myself, what did Josh say? What did Josh say? Oh, the rotator cuff, right. Oh, shit. Okay, right. Yeah. That makes sense. Right. Okay. Well, what I'll say to you, Josh, is with regards to the rotator cuff, I have a guy in the books right now who has a rotator cuff issue. His issue hasn't bothered him yet, and we've been working together for 8 weeks. So you can work around it. And he goes on to say he'll be hiring me in a few months. If you do hire me, we will create a routine which you can do and progressively load, which doesn't affect you. Okay, so yeah, okay, cool. Hit Sweden, natty respect, thank you. W. Dale says, I'm here because I'm a DEI hire. Equity baby. I don't understand what that means. Sorry, Dale. I know you read my comments a lot. I know you're a good dude. Sorry, I don't understand what that means. Corey, congrats on 8K. Thank you. What are your thoughts on saturated fats from meat dairy? Does your answer change if a client has elevated LDL? Yeah, I mean, I think saturated fats from meat and dairy, I don't think are a bad thing. I think there is a growing body of evidence known as the food matrix, which seems to suggest that food, when it's found within, well, these things, when they're found within their natural form, aren't as bad for us. There was actually a recent review or a meta or something on Examine, which said that the effects of saturated fat have been overblown. So I think like there is potential for that to be a more nuanced conversation. Like I had the question earlier about icky carbs and saturated fat. I think if you're purposely going out of your way to add saturated fat back to your diet, like lots of bacon, lots of oil, lots of butter, you're adding processed saturated fat. That's a bad idea. But if you're adding it from meat and dairy, I genuinely, my thoughts are that the current scientific stance is that it doesn't matter as much. I don't think everybody says that. I think a lot of governments are still working on the fact that they have their guidance. But I think over the next few years, we will be moving towards the food pyramid kind of food matrix, kind of paradigm. Thank you, Dale, for the congratulations. Sorry, I didn't get the joke earlier. Drew says, general life question. You seem to have learned a good deal in this life, but you were also young once. As a young man making his way in the world, do you have any advice on being judgmental? Oh, judgmental enough to discern which people are to be listened to and admired and which people to dismiss. I'm smart but lack life experience and don't want to be arrogant. No, that's a very good question. I'll give you an example of this. So I have a client in the books now who's a brother of another client. Now, the second client is actually a very good friend of mine. He's a guy I used to teach. He's an old student of mine. Get this, how weird is this story, right? This is a guy I taught when I first started teaching. So we're looking 20 years ago. And he's one of those students who I always remembered as being a good student, like a guy who he made an impact on me. I always knew he'd be okay. He was intelligent, he was switched on. And I remember I was sat around a couple of years back and I was talking to my wife about this kid. I was like, I was going through students who I remember. Every teacher can relate to this. You have like 3 or 4 students who you remember over a lifetime. And I was telling my wife about that student. Bear in mind, at this point, I'd not seen him for 17 years. And I was just talking about him. And 2 days later, he DMs me on Instagram. He's like, all right, sir. And so he hires me for coaching, and I've been coaching him for 2 years. But anyway, the point is, his brother was being coached by another coach who I could tell was an absolute clown based on the stuff that he told me. Now, his brother and also him, they're very, very intelligent, very, very successful people in business, very successful. So in their area of expertise, they're objectively extremely good. They are sharks when it comes to business. When it came to lifting and supplementation and diet, they knew nothing. And so this guy, my client's brother, was completely hoodwinked by his ex-coach, who appeared to talk a very good game and appeared to be an expert in his area. I could tell that guy was full of shit because everything he was saying, which was very cookie cutter, it sounded good. He was very convincing. So I think that's what you're asking, Drew, is how can you discern who's telling you the truth, who's not? The fact is, Drew, you're not going to be able to. If it's a field where you don't have as much expertise and you're looking for a mentor, you're not going to be able to. It's going to be very difficult to do that. This is why I always say you have to be, even with a mentor, you have to be extremely objective as to what's working for you. So it's very difficult to know it's trust. Obviously, I would say myself, I think I'm quite genuine in this regard. I'd also say age comes into play. Like I see a lot of coaches who are still in their 20s. It's a bit fucking cringe, to be honest. Like, how much are you going to learn in that time period? So when it comes to like life stuff, you want to look for somebody who has been in your position, who has surpassed your position and is in the next position in life. But even then, it's not enough to determine whether they are trustworthy or not. Like in the case of fitness, it could be drugs. In the case of business, it could be luck. Everybody wins in a bull market is the classic thing, right? Like there are many experts who come up in a bull market. I mean, the crypto boom was a great example of that. Everyone's all of a sudden a crypto expert. But experts are experts because they've dealt with the ups and the downs. That comes in life. It comes in lifting. But anyway, I'm not sure I'm being very helpful, Drew. You asked me, how do you listen to people? How do you know who to listen to? I just think it's very tough because I've had this before as well. I've listened to people where sometimes the better lesson they taught me was what not to be, what not to act like. I think it's very tough. I think you have to have some experience in the area yourself to know enough to know what you don't know. And also you have to be very careful to ensure that the advice you're being given will benefit you objectively. Like I'll give you another example. I've got a a colleague of mine, I won't say a friend because we don't talk as much anymore. He spent $5,000 on a business coach during lockdown. $5,000. That's a lot of money. Now, he sent me the resources his business coach gave him. Just motivational shit. He spent $5,000 on like a day planner with motivational phrases and a bit of a talk on how to aggressively close phone deals. That's it. Literally all it was. $5,000. Why did he pay $5,000 for that? Because the guy made him think he had the answers. And also my friend he had no experience in sales. So he thought, well, this is good stuff. Wow, look at me. It's so good. I'm going to give it to Faz. Like, Faz, look at this. Well, I got $5,000. So useful. I knew from being in business for a long time, it was pointless. So you have to have a certain amount of experience in an area to know what you don't know and to know what you are looking for. And then you have to objectively test things yourself and then decide. But if you get a red flag from someone, talk to them, figure it out. If they can't give you an answer, just put them down to another person who talks a good game. You have to be very objective. Like Drew example, you're quite young, so I don't know if you'd be able to, but if you could afford me for coaching, you'll know that with my coaching, I explain all my choices, and I'm quite happy to do that. Quite happy to engage in conversations. There's nothing that I put in my coaching programs which I can't back up as being something which I have a good reason for. But yeah, there are a lot of con men out there. I think the worst thing with con men is a lot of them don't know that they're being con men. A lot of them don't know. It's like the whole thing. Like everyone's an expert in a bull market. So, a lot of guys don't know they're good at fitness because they're just young, gifted, and on trend. So you have to have a certain amount of experience yourself, and you have to objectively look at whether things are working for you. If you get a red flag, you have to bring it up and say, look, coach, or whoever, this is fucked. Like if you see a red flag on a YouTube account, pull the plug, or maybe ask them a question, see what they say. Like if you ask me a question about something I've said on my YouTube videos, and you ask it in a respectful way, I'll give you an answer. I shouldn't be able to reply, but I think if you ask somebody a question and they either get angry or they're not willing to engage, they're probably a huckster. So, yeah, honestly, Drew, this is one of the hardest questions. Yeah, being objective, super hard. Stein, Adonis Slim says, will using a belt actually help to improve strength and muscle faster? Yes. Belts, I say yes. Belts I'm a fan of. Glock Christ says, I wish my parents heard this. Hugh Wattmate says, how far do your arms need to be down the pad on preacher curls? You want them far enough so that the bulk of your arm is resting flat. If you're not far enough, your elbow will be on the pad. You don't want that. If you're too far, you'll restrict your movement. You want it just enough that the bulk, the meat of your arm, not your elbow, is on the pad. That's what you want. Adonis Slim says, do you ever use percentage-based plans? I used to when I was a powerlifter, but not anymore. N3330 says, congrats, Faz. Thank you. DDS, thank you. Thai Spirit, thank you very much. Glock Christ says, if your current life circumstances don't allow you to get an optimal amount of protein, would you rather be at a surplus or deficit if you're near 20% body fat? Ooh, good question. Well, you don't say, where are you coming from? Are you at 22% or 18%? It's a difference. But still, I think, honestly, I'd have to see a picture of you. Some people's 20% looks different to other people's. 20% is not fat. I just want to say 20% is not fat at all. 20% is almost what a lot of regular non-gym lifters would consider to be too skinny. 20% is lean. No, I think that's probably more of a general question. I would say if you're making progress in a gym, just carry on doing what you're doing, bulking. If, for example, you're in a bulking phase and you've stopped making progress, then cut. If you're in a cutting phase, carry on cutting. So, yeah. Baron, thank you very much for the congrats. Thank you. Bahala Nar says, what 3 workouts would build your shoulders? Mine just won't grow. I mean, workouts don't build shoulders. The progressive overload builds shoulders. So you have to ensure you're doing enough to add weight to the bar. And I would also say I'm not a massive fan of the overhead press because I think it interferes with the recovery you need to get stronger on the bench press and incline pressures. So Bahala, I would probably say focus on your benching, your incline pressing, and then your lateral movements. If you're doing a lower volume approach, you probably have room to overhead press as well. But this is one of those, Bahala, where you're asking for a whole routine to build shoulders. And I think just get on a good routine. Any one of mine will do, you know. Mercenary says, when doing OHPs, is it best to reset the bar? Is it best to rest the bar on the clavicle every rep or just before to keep tension? I mean, I would never go that low. I can't. I mean, no, just go down to a comfortable distance and then push back up. I think the overhead press is one of those where I found over the course of the years, people I've worked with, the last, I think 20% of the overhead press is very, very variable as to who can do that from here to here range of motion and not get hurt. For some people, I think it just causes wearing of the joints. I don't know why. I think it's something to do with the joint structure, but go down to the point where it's comfortable. Don't worry too much about arbitrary cutoffs. Like I've got to go down to my clavicle. Go down to where it's comfortable. Thank you, Podcast. Okay. Wiam says, do you still run the 4-way split? Actually, I've changed. Unfortunately, I've gone to push-pull legs. Yeah. I'm doing a little bit more work on load management and just my exercise performance. And I think I can do slightly higher frequency with that. So now I'm doing a push-pull legs with 2 rotations, training 5 days a week. Okay. Cool. Thank you. Thank you for the congrats. Hugh Watt Mate says, when you were a powerlifter, could you squat and bench press very close to mechanical failure while still maintaining great technique? Yes, I could. How would you recommend people go about achieving this? Just practice, really. Just practice. This is one of the signs of somebody who's advanced. Advanced people are able to train close to or past failure while ensuring they keep this form the same. Now, I would say as well, at a certain point, you've practiced the movement so much that your default failure position will be optimal form. What I mean by that is people who change their form, like they flare their elbows or they arch their back when they're about to fail, they do that because their body shifts to a more advantageous position. However, for you, for advanced guys, because they're so trained, the strongest position is the one which is lifting the weight in the optimal form because they practice so much. So as a result, when you are very well trained, you shouldn't really have a situation where you break form. There are exceptions to this. I think some people will still round their back or their built will shoot up when they squat, for example. So there are some exceptions, but generally speaking, there's a lot less of that. You see it more in intermediates and beginners. So in terms of achieving that, what I would say is continue to do. You may have to avoid failure or avoid getting close to failure. You may have to do RDL work and do a little bit more volume. It's very similar to what powerlifters do. They'll do more and more sets, more and more volume with crisp, perfect 3s and 5s rather than sets of 8 and 10 where it's harder to maintain the form. Just make up for it with more volume. Bodybuilders don't generally do that because it's a little bit tougher on the body, whereas powerlifters will do that, and form is more important for powerlifters because they have to do repeatability. All right. I can't read this because I think it's in Japanese characters. I think that's Japanese. Do you have any advice for forearm exercise with that routine? I'm good at pulling exercises, but there's a noticeable development difference between my forearms and bis and tris. If it's a notable difference, it's probably a genetic thing. I'll be honest, you sound like a kind of guy who's not very advanced and is just small all round. But you're hyper-focusing on areas which you want to get bigger. Like you have an obsession with your forearm, for example. Like people having, there was a couple of years back, everybody in this space was obsessed with neck work and forearm work. And I think it's a little bit of cope. I think big guys have big necks. Very few big guys have small necks or small forearms. Mostly people who are not seeing the size in the neck and forearms are just small all over. And they don't realize they just need to get big all over. It's the equivalent of a fat person saying, I want to slim down, I'm trimmed everywhere, but I just want my waist to get smaller. You look at them and you think, actually, you're fat everywhere. So my thoughts are you're probably a kind of guy who's just under-muscled everywhere. Sorry, I don't mean, I'm not saying it to be offensive, but that's my general experience. You're probably small everywhere, and it's not just your forearms, it's everything. If you are the 1 in a million who has genetically weak forearms, just your genetics, man. You'll get better eventually. Ty says, any thoughts on doing multiple rest pause sets instead of straight sets? I do have thoughts on that. Just be very careful on the volume. You can overdo those very quickly. One proper rest pause set done properly with, say, 2 or 3 rest pauses afterwards, that is brutal. It's absolutely brutal. You may not need anything else. I mean, you look at the classic DC training, that was 1 rest pause set. So just be very careful with the volume. That's all. And the other thing is, if you end up doing 2 or 3 rest pause sets, you're probably going to hold back a lot more. The whole thing with rest pause is you should be going all out. If you've got 3 rest pause sets to do, it's a whole bunch of work. The effort is probably going to be, in your mind, you're probably going to think to yourself, oh, pull back a little bit. So just be careful with volume. I think rest pauses are more conducive to low volume approaches, and you can really just go all out. Rico, any thoughts of doing live maybe once a month? Don't think so. Unlikely. I mean, I'll see how popular this is. You got to remember, like, it's a lot. Like I, my full-time job is coaching. That's a lot of work. And the model of coaching I use is very intense, very detailed. People get value for money when they follow my coaching. I think a lot of coaches will just message their clients every day, like text message, "You do your workout today? How's your diet?" Like, that's not my coaching. It's a lot more intense. So my predominant work is YouTube, is coaching. YouTube is very much like a side thing for me. Don't get me wrong, like, I really enjoy it and I love the whole interaction, but it's not my main priority. So lives month to month, I don't know. We'll have to see. Maybe. It's a maybe. Next question was from Buff Bird Enjoyer. Deadlifts and squats on heavy days, is it doable and how? It's doable. I would say probably do a variation of deadlifts and also lower the volume. Only go, if you're doing a heavy day on a Wizard, do 1 set of squats, 1 set of deadlifts. That's one change that I would make with the Wizard if I rewrote it for a 3rd version, because that's what I did originally. I only ever did 1 set of squats and 1 set of deadlifts. I never did multiple sets. I would do multiple sets of squats, bench, pull-ups, overhead press, but I would only ever do 1 set of squats and deadlifts. That goes for the heavy day and the medium day. Light days, I would do 3 sets of leg extensions, leg curls, but only 1 set. So it is doable. Do regular squats and maybe do stiff leg deadlifts. That's fine. 1 set. Okay. Glockcry says, what are your thoughts on biasing exercises with a movement pattern that you have fail in a lengthened mid-range rather than shortened? I do not understand that question at all. What are your thoughts on biasing exercises with the movement pattern that you have fail in? I don't really understand what that is. Just try and rewrite that if you get a second. Portgaz says, should I wait till I get sick to my stomach during the noob routine before moving to the tactician? Probably, yes. I mean, that's what's written in the book. That's what's written in the book, yeah. I mean, if you're still progressing, why change? Just keep going for it. I would also say don't progress to the tactician, progress to the Wizard. Mercenary says, have you ever suffered from hip issues and how did you overcome them? I think my sedentary desk job is beginning to take its toll. Yeah, I mean, I never suffered from hip issues because of the way I'm built. My issues came in the knees and the elbows because I'm more long-limbed. So my lower back, my hips never really had that many issues. Same with shoulders. I was more, because I'm quite limmy. I'm not like super tall, I'm 5'11", but because I'm quite limmy, my issues all came in my elbows and my knees. So I think I never had that. But with terms of sedentary job, be more active. It really helps. Get your step count or do your cardio in the gym. I do half an hour of cardio every day now, well, except for Saturday. So that's the big thing. The big thing is, the problem here is sedentary job taking its toll. Just don't be sedentary. That's the problem. I know it sounds simple, but I don't mean it like obvious. I'm not trying to be offensive, but it is a simple solution. Is just be more active. Hugh Whatmate says, is there a way that you coach effort, aggression, and sets? Recently, I've been surprising myself with an extra rep. You'd be surprised, mate. It's a big thing. I would say this is one of my biggest challenges as a coach, is getting people to work harder. I would say the vast majority, say 90%, 75% of my clients, I'm constantly pushing them to work harder and keep keeping an eye on their intensity. The other 25% I'm pulling back. So a truism in training is your first focus, your first priority in terms of training intensity is to train harder. That's phase one. Phase two is learning how to temper that effort. Okay. So what I do to explain this is I look at bar speed, how much slowdown there is in sets. Typically speaking, in a guy who's very, very well trained and can push to failure, you will see about 3, give or take 1 or 2, about 3 slowing reps towards the end. Okay, that's my general rule. It'll get a bit slow, a bit more slow, painfully slow, and then boom. If I don't see that, but a guy's making faces and he just fails, that's a bad sign. And I'll tell him that, and then it's up to him to see whether he agrees with that or not. The other thing is how you fail. One thing that I've seen people do is they'll get a bit of difficulty and then boom, oh, I'm done. It's like a little bit of difficulty, I'm done, just give up. That's another thing where I think to myself, mentally, this guy's weak. Because if you fail with the intention to push, you might stall and you like grind, pause, and then slowly come down. That's a fail. When I see somebody go up and go, oh, I failed, oh, they drop the bar. Like the classic example is that the Brad Schoenfeld in Mountain Dog video where Brad Schoenfeld says, oh, that's my failure. Look at how he fails. There's no slowdown, and it's hard and he gives up. For me, he would be a terrible client because I would have to get him to work harder. Because, with that level of intensity, you could recover from tons of volume. But if you actually train hard, that's when it's more effective and your volume has to go down because each set is more effective. So that's how I coach it. I show clients in live during their check-ins. I show them the reps which are slowing down, all the reps which aren't slowing down, and I suggest, look, we could push a little harder. So that's what I do. And I also make sure they feel safe when they're pushing. So if we're doing a bench press, bench in a rack. If we're doing a squat, squat in a rack. If we're doing machine press, understand you can fail and there's no danger. So you have to emphasize safety and convince somebody that it's safe to fail. And then they're more willing to push hard. Some of it's just guts as well. Some people just lack the guts. Glock Cry says, I'm sorry, I meant exercise where you stop the bottom, like where you can't fail in a more length position, like a single arm preacher. Let me just go back to what he was asking. What are your thoughts on biasing exercises with a movement pattern? Spider curl versus single arm preacher. Oh, I see. I understand. Sorry, I understand. So basically what he's asking is, do I place more focus on exercises which are where you fail more at the length position than you fail at the contracted position? So essentially this is a lengthen, like a stretch question. I don't personally. No, I don't. My biggest push is for clients to find exercises that they are suited to. Now some of them might be lengthened, some of them might be shortened. Doesn't really matter. I think generally speaking, most exercises would lend themselves to lengthened work, and only some exercises lend themselves to shortened work, particularly. But I don't think any of that's really relevant to growing. I think the majority of my audience is not advanced enough to need to know that level of nuance of stretch positions, contracted positions. What else? Like angles and biomechanics and all that kind of stuff. The majority of people do not need to know that. All they need to do is to progressively load the lifts which they are suited to for medium to high reps in good form and get strong as shit on that. I can pretty much guarantee you, like if I saw a picture of the type of people who ask this question, not please don't think I'm shit talking you, I'm not. But if I was to see pictures of guys who typically ask these kind of questions on social media, they hardly look like they've been in the gym. That's the last thing they need to worry about. The most they need to worry about is hit an exercise, hit a body part as often as you can, get it growing, push body weight up, get strong in the bodybuilding rep range with good form, and do that for like 3 years. That will do more. And then you'll realize all this stuff is meaningless. So that's my answer. Can I use the 8,003s for the heavy day exercise in the wizard routine? No. Do the wizard routine as it's written, please. Don't mix and match my approaches. Mercenary says, thanks. To strengthen the joints, would you recommend a focus on higher reps and lower weight? No, I wouldn't. The joints get strength. It is one of the biggest misconceptions that joints need something extra or different to get strengthened. They do not. To get strengthened, joints just need training. Joints will get strengthened. What you need is more time. And this is true the older you get. The joints just need more time to recover than the muscles. That's all. Now, when you're younger and you're weaker, you're not putting much stress on the muscles anyway. And you're younger, so it's easier. So you don't think about the joints. But joints just need time to recover. That's all. They don't need anything to get stronger. They're getting stronger from training. The higher up stuff that you see people do and suggest is for recovery. Like Alex Leonidas, he's a great example of this. Great guy, love the dude. He said in his book, you do the extra workouts. You're not doing that to strengthen the joints. You're doing that for recovery of the joints. The heavy days strengthen the joints. It's like me. My light days, they are done to recover, boost recovery. They're not done to strengthen the joints. Joints are strengthened from heavy work with heavy weights and challenging sets. Light stuff is there for recovery and to pump blood flow in. It's not done to strengthen them. It's to make them feel good. That's why I do my light day. Okay. Amadeo says, can I run your bob air and upper lower for a long time? Oh, yes, you can. You can. Well, if you've bought the book, you'll realize it's not just one routine. I have to clarify this. All of my books, they're not just one routine. There are 3 stages. It's a beginner, intermediate, advanced. The idea is that 15 pounds is enough for like 5 years. You got to understand, like, I don't want to blow my own horn, but like, I don't put out routines just because, I've got a holiday coming up, I need to pay for it. Like, these are systems of training which will last a lifetime. And if I put out an extra book, it's going to be something which is not out yet, like a push-pull legs or a blow split book. It's not going to be another version of another routine. I do systems of training. Each book, you get a lot for your money. Brandon Clark says lat bias and upper back bias, short length, etc. Oh, how do you approach a deload? Well, I do not. I don't do anything to do with bias of anything. What I would say is with the deloads, I think on balance, my most common approach I personally take, if I'm absolutely battered, like if I'm absolutely battered, I only deload if I'm absolutely battered. Like before I went on holiday recently, I got back yesterday actually. I was absolutely battered, like everything hurt. I do not recommend training that hard, but it got to the point where every exercise just hurt. I just felt like something was going to go every time. But I didn't want to take a deload early because I was going to go on holiday for 2 weeks and I wasn't going to train. So basically for you, like a regular guy, if you really need a deload, if you're absolutely battered, maybe take 3 full days off the gym and then do 2 full body light days on the back end of that deload week and then go back to the gym. The only reason you're doing like 1 or 2 full body light days is just to ensure your body isn't, it's not a surprise to your body when you get back to the gym. That's the only reason. But generally speaking, yeah, just half week off, maybe 1 or 2 full body light workouts and then back to the gym to start the next week. Should be enough. I wouldn't even think about lat bias and upper back bias. To be honest, Brandon, my back is my best body part. Well, my back is a good body part. It's not my best body part. But I don't think about angles and stuff. I'll tell you something funny, Brandon, since we're nearing the end of this chat. When I got onto YouTube in 2021, people noticed my back, right? And they said, back fast, how'd you build your back? What's going on? And I heard 2 statements. The first question was, how did you build your back? And the second statement was, deadlifts don't build a back. So in 2021, I had been training for almost 25 years, right? 22 years of training. And I was, I had a good pedigree of, strong in the back. But people were most impressed with my traps. And they said, like, how'd you build your back? And I would always say, I did a lot of deadlifts. And people would always tell me, deadlifts don't build your back. It's crazy, isn't it? It's like, imagine asking somebody who's really good at business, tremendous, has built lots of businesses, built it from the ground up. And he gives you an answer and say, hey, this is how you succeed in business. And you go, that's not how you succeed. And that was the craziest thing. So people still say to me, deadlifts don't build your back. And I don't know what to say. That attitude is less prevalent in England because I think a lot of British guys do deadlifts on pull day, and it's much more acknowledged here that heavy deadlifts are very good for you. So yeah, for me, all that kind of stuff, it doesn't really make a difference. Anyway, I think I'm rambling now. It's been 2.5 hours, guys. I'm going to call it there. Okay, one more question. He said, when did you peak physique-wise or strength? Peak physique for me, I think, was probably 2018, 2019, I think. Strength was 2014. Yeah, I've never been as strong as I was 2014. Yeah, that was very strong then. My best lifts then were 255 squat kilos, 180 kilo bench, 300 kilo deadlift, and 90 kilos. Very strong. Lawlet Blank says straps or mixed grip on the deadlift. Straps. Don't use mixed grip. Always straps. Always straps. Always straps. Yes, mixed grip does affect your trap symmetry. Yeah. And not just trap symmetry, but it affects your whole back. Don't risk it. And also, you're risking bicep tear as well. I mean, bicep tears a lot less common because, you know, we're all naturals here. But yeah, use straps. Straps are not going to affect your grip at all. You're not going to get a poor grip because of straps. Okay, anyway, guys, I'm going to call it there. Thank you very much. I am now back. Will be regular videos next week as usual. And I'm going to call it there. Peace out. Take care.